100:00:00:00:00:00:08. For 33-hour girl's life was one enormous mistake, and that mistake began the moment she chose to defy her father. It all started with a raging fire that took everything from her. Her mother sacrificed herself to save her daughter and was burned to ashes. But while she saved her daughter, she also lost her father's heart forever. He did not shed a single tear for his wife, but she heard his true thoughts clearly. It would have been better if you had died instead. From that day on, her father became a stranger, a cold man who despised her. He even forbade her from using magic, though magic was the only connection she still had to her late mother. Years later, she defied him again and tried to speak with her mother's spirit. Her father's fury was terrifying. "I warned you not to use magic." He snatched away the precious necklace her mother had left her. "Give it back," she cried. "That is the only thing that connects me to her." But he would not listen at all. During the argument, her foot slipped and she tumbled down the stairs. The last words he left her with were cold enough to pierce bone. "I have no daughter as disobedient as you." And so she left, turning her back on her family completely. But tragedy struck once more. When she returned, she found her father on the verge of death, struck down by black magic. A dark curse was devouring everyone inside the cathedral. Her father's body had been pierced through, and he was bleeding endlessly right before her eyes. The girl, now a powerful mage, rushed to his side and desperately tried to heal him, but it was useless. Her healing magic did not work at all. Panic crushed her in an instant. This could not be happening. Before he died, her father finally apologized. "I am sorry. But now, only you can protect everyone." He pressed her mother's necklace back into her hand. She clutched the familiar jewel tightly as tears ran down her cheeks. "Why?" she sobbed. "You hated me so much." "Go stop him," he whispered, just as your mother once did. Then he was gone. A man stepped out from the shadows, the new Emperor Karl, and he had been manipulating everything from behind the scenes. She glared at the two-faced bastard she had once called a friend. He had promised to protect her family, but instead he used them as sacrifices in a ritual, and she was the one who had helped him ascend the throne. "Why would he do this?" she screamed, but he only sneered, completely indifferent to the horror around him. He revealed his insane plan. Everyone in the empire would become a sacrifice. He mocked her, called her a clown, and provoked her to stop him. Enough. The girl finally broke. She released a surging wave of holy magic, but the dark magic circle absorbed it directly. How could this be? The cursed magic circle began draining her own mana. It dragged her down her knees. Karl simply stood above her, his disappointment plain to see. "For a great mage like you," he jeered, "to become so utterly useless." He burst into mad laughter, but the girl was not finished yet. She grabbed his ankle, a dark smile spreading across her face. "Then let us go to hell together." Darkness erupted from within her, swallowing everything in one last desperate strike. But it failed completely. As her consciousness gradually faded, only regret remained in her heart. She had ignored her father's warnings and chased after people who were already gone. As she sank into nothingness, guilt and remorse were her only companions. From the bottom of her heart, she prayed, "Please, God, let me start over from the very beginning." And just like that, she opened her eyes. She gasped and found herself lying in a familiar, luxurious bed. This was her room, the room from her childhood, exactly as she remembered it. She leapt out of bed and rushed to the mirror. Had her prayer truly been answered? The bandage on her wrist was from the day she fell down the stairs. The bedroom door flew open, and the maids rushed in. Seeing that she was awake, they were shocked and hurried off to inform her father. The family butler stepped forward with concern on his face. "My lady," he said gently, "this time you truly disappointed all of us." This time, she knew exactly when she was. She pretended to have lost her memory, hoping to buy herself a little time. He explained that after arguing with her father, she had fallen down the stairs and had been unconscious for 2 days. It was that day, the day her father severed ties with her. She tried to heal her wrist, and the butler's eyes widened in shock. "Stop at once," he shouted, but it was already too late. The door opened, and there he stood, her father, alive. He still looked as cold and dignified as he did in her memories. His gaze instantly locked onto the magic she was using. "Abby, you disappoint me so much." But this time she did not resist. She had never imagined she would be able to see him again. At least, not like this, whole and healthy, rather than collapsed on a cold floor and bleeding endlessly. Before he could react, she ran over and threw her arms around him. The entire room froze. She buried her face in his chest and cried, "Father, I missed you so much." She sobbed as she spoke. Her poor father was utterly confused. What on earth was she talking about? Then he pushed her away. The rejection stung her, but she understood. He turned and left, coldly ordering the butler to call a doctor. She watched him leave, and her heart sank. Maybe she could not change anything after all. But just then, he stopped at the doorway. "In any case, it is good that you are awake." After leaving behind that tiny trace of tenderness, he departed. A faint spark of hope lit in her chest. He still loves me. All right, new life, new plan. First priority, repair my relationship with father. She tried hard to be a lovable daughter and wanted to stay by his side. But he slammed the door shut in her face. Wait, did she just see an affection bar pop up above his head? The maids were already whispering in private, saying she must have damaged her head in the fall. And Plan A failed completely. The girl collapsed on her bed and reconsidered her strategy. She was utterly determined. This time, she had to get closer to her father. She looked at the old family portrait, a painful reminder of everything she had lost. But now that she had been given a second chance, she finally understood that her father had forbidden her from using magic not to hurt her, but to protect her. Their family name carried a heavy burden, a history of immense power. And that power had brought just as much bloodshed and disaster. Her father had watched his entire family be destroyed because of that power. He had sent her away to keep her safe. But in her previous life, she had been too selfish to see that. In the study, her father stared at an acceptance letter. It had come from the tree tower. He did not want her anywhere near the imperial capital and its political struggles. It was far too dangerous there. Just then, a soft knock sounded at the door. "Father, it is me." He panicked inwardly. Why had she suddenly become so clingy? "I have something very important to tell you," she said, dressed in a pure green gown. She looked so sincere that he allowed her in, though his expression remained cold. She began with a simple apology, but he interrupted her. "If that is all, you may leave." That hurt. She continued speaking and brought up the letter from the tower. He immediately refused her. "We have already discussed this. Forget about it." She could see the worry in his eyes, so she gave an answer he had never expected. "Do not worry, father. I will not go to the tree tower." His eyes widened in shock. "I was too immature before," she said steadily. "I want to fulfill my duty as a member of this family." He was completely stunned. What on earth was she thinking? He even genuinely wondered if her brain had been damaged by a high fever. This had to be a trick. Was she simply trying to manipulate him so she could run away? But the butler reminded him that she possessed astonishing power. Her talent was like a beacon. There was no way to hide it. But the greater the talent, the greater the danger that came with it. The imperial family would use her, turn her into a tool, and then cast her aside, just as they had done to her mother. He absolutely could not let that happen to Abby. The girl walked down the long corridor, her resolve growing firmer. This was only the beginning. She knew this path was dangerous, perhaps even more dangerous than in her previous life. But it was the only way to uncover the truths she had missed before. This time, I will stay by your side. In her previous life, after arguing with her father, she had left home and found refuge in the isolated magic tower. It was a place of miracles. She did not regret the time she spent there, because that was where she met her professor. Back then, the girl had been too naive, nothing more than a child longing for her mother. But soon, she had no home left to return to. The power-hungry third prince tried to draw her and the magic tower to his side. This enraged her father, and the emperor also stripped him of his title and territory. She needed the prince's help to save her family, but by the time she returned to the empire, it was already too late. Her eldest brother had died, and her second brother had also been assassinated. A few days later, Karl was the one who told her the news, and he blamed their deaths on their enemies. Looking back, she realized how reckless she had been back then. There was another, far more sinister possibility. What if Karl had planned the entire thing and then framed that prince? That man was fully capable of such evil. The maid told her that her brother, the hero of the expedition, was a complete workaholic. He had not rested at all after returning. and all the money he earned was used to buy pretty dresses for the girl. A wave of guilt surged through her heart. In her previous life, she had not even managed to properly thank him because she had witnessed his death with her own eyes. What kind of joke is this? She screamed inwardly. The girl would never allow history to repeat itself. She used magic to secretly infiltrate the imperial palace. Her target was Karl. In the future, he would drag everyone into an evil abyss. She had to find out whether he was already plotting something. She peered inside and saw a handsome young man studying diligently. He looked so earnest and pure. This was the villain Karl? The girl was completely dumbfounded. A maid walked in and told His Highness it was time to leave. He agreed and prepared to go. He is leaving, she thought as she watched him depart. He looked far too normal, not like a madman at all. But just then, a voice cut through the silence. My lady. She froze in shock. Who on earth was speaking to her? And who was this absurdly handsome man with glowing red eyes? All right, let us take 1 second to appreciate that face first. She tried to calm herself down. I used invisibility magic. There is no way he is talking to me. I'm talking to you, he said, shattering her self-deception. She had been exposed. Invisibility was advanced magic, something even most mages could not see through, yet this man could see her perfectly clearly. He simply stood there, looking far too good in that robe. His deep crimson eyes locked firmly onto her. She panicked and started thinking about how to knock him unconscious. But he sneered, I advise you not to act rashly. Magic does not work on me. He interrogated her, asking who she was and why she was here. He slowly descended the stairs, his presence so overwhelming it was hard to breathe. It is not difficult to guess, he said with a chilling smile. Ranch Kaladi, or should I say Colin? He knew her real name. How was that possible? He had not moved, and he had no weapon on him. She did not waste another second. She turned and fled. She floated up above the city. The man simply watched her with admiration in his eyes. Her magic surpassed that of ordinary mages. Yet he remained completely unshaken. The guards rushed to his side. Your Highness crowned Prince Vyn. He calmly ordered them to search the courtyard. Of course, they found nothing. Just then, the real Karl appeared. He asked what had happened. Vyn lied with ease. Nothing. Just a cat. He asked Karl if he had finished reading, then did something unexpected. He ruffled the boy's hair. Rest when you're tired. Karl was completely stunned by this intimacy. Yes, brother, he whispered, and Vyn turned to leave. By leave, that meant he casually climbed out through the window. The girl landed in a dark alley, her heart nearly exploding. That had been far too close, and who exactly was that man? She had no memories of him from her previous life, and her mind was in complete chaos. The information broker she had originally intended to meet should have been a frail man, but that guy was basically a monster. She recalled what had just happened. When he grabbed her wrist, it had felt like being struck by electricity. She sighed. Investigating Karl, right now, was clearly too dangerous. She decided to go home first, but her current body was very weak. Her mana density was insufficient, and the spell suddenly dispersed. Her hand was empty. Wait, where was Mother's necklace? Meanwhile, the guards reported that they had found no intruder. Vyn coldly dismissed them. He walked through the garden, thinking that she was definitely no ordinary mage. Suddenly, he saw a flash of light in the bushes. It was the heart-shaped necklace she had dropped. He knelt down to examine it and picked up the precious keepsake. The girl found herself inside a grand, yet empty hall. She wondered if all of this was a dream. A man sat on the sofa, his icy gaze fixed firmly on her. It was Karl, and the same terrifying smile hung on his face. He asked her, "Are you afraid of me?" He closed the distance between them, his voice low as a whisper. "Afraid that I will tear everything apart?" His mad laughter echoed through the nightmare. The girl jolted awake, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. Seeing Karl again had completely thrown her off balance. She remembered how he had always pretended to hate power in the past. It had all been a realistic performance, a perfect disguise. But she had never been able to figure out who he was imitating. Then it suddenly came to her, the man from the banquet. She remembered the chaos of that night, when assassins had attempted to attack the prince. And Karl's reaction had been pure, out-of-control brutality. The gentle prince she had known was nothing but a complete fraud. After that, she immediately began distancing herself from him. After he became emperor, she fled back to the magic tower. She cut off all contact with that man completely. She had once thought his mask of benevolence would be enough for him to rule the empire. But later, she received a letter. Karl was obsessed with black magic, and it was a desperate plea for help. So she used a powerful transfer spell. It worked. The magic was now sealed inside the pendant. She was simply relieved that she had not accidentally created some kind of monster. Now, she had to send this replica back and retrieve the real necklace from the Imperial Palace. The problem was she did not have much time, and she had no idea whose hands the necklace was currently in. She tried asking her father about Prince Vyn, but he directly refused to speak and had been giving her the cold shoulder ever since. She knew the fastest way to enter the Imperial Palace was marriage. There were only 3 families suitable for a political marriage with her, but 2 of them were politically impossible, leaving only the Imperial family. Her brother reminded her that the Imperial family had 3 princes, Vyn, Karl, and Ancedo. The problem was that Prince Ancedo was still just a child. The girl sighed, right? Marrying a baby would not work. And Prince Karl was a complete recluse. No one could see him. The maid brought over a stunning new dress for her to try on. It was a gift from her second brother. How thoughtful. She looked absolutely beautiful, but her mind was elsewhere. The maid asked bluntly whether she truly intended to marry the first prince. The girl was caught completely off guard. The maid began rattling off the terrifying rumors about him. It was said that sharp claws were hidden inside his gloves. There were also rumors that his sword truly glowed red because of blood. It was said that merely getting close to him would make one's body ache with pain. The girl thought all of this sounded like absurdly exaggerated gossip. The maid begged her to stay away from him. The girl thought, great, I'm already doomed. But the maid insisted that the rumors were all true. Damn it, she thought. She realized that her father had seen straight through her bluff. Suddenly, footsteps approached her room. The maid opened the door and found the Duke standing there. The girl was shocked. Father? What is he doing here so early? He handed her something. It was an invitation to a banquet at the Imperial Palace. He held up the elegant royal invitation. He said the prince she wanted to meet would be there. She was rendered utterly speechless. The Duke's attendant was confused and asked why the Duke had changed his mind. The Duke said it was time for his daughter to grow up, but there was also a selfish motive behind it. He wanted her to see with her own eyes what kind of monster that prince truly was. All of this was to protect what belonged to him. A poor girl was sobbing inconsolably after her mother's death when a knock suddenly sounded in the empty room. She nervously lifted her head, wondering who it could be. The door creaked open, and the one who came in was her brother, Patrick, wearing his signature gentle smile. He asked if he could come in, and she softly agreed. He sat down beside her and promised to fill that empty wardrobe for her. He wanted to pack it full of soft things so she would never feel hurt again. Back in the present, our girl was no longer a child. And this time, it was not a wardrobe. The butler was trying to pack her schedule until it was completely full. She wondered whether she should use magic to speed things up, but the butler was watching her like a hawk. She asked herself if she really had to learn all of this before the banquet. He confirmed that the Duke was serious. Until she passed, she was basically grounded. The pressure hit her all at once. She asked how much time she had left. 25 days. Our girl realized she was about to suffer terribly, but she made up her mind. She had to attend that banquet. And so, the hellish training began. First came etiquette lessons. She had to learn how to curtsy like a true lady. Her movements were graceful and dignified, practically perfect. The teacher was stunned and praised her for being outstanding. Next came painting lessons. She painted an apple so realistic it looked like a photograph, leaving the art teacher speechless. Amazed, he asked if she wanted to study art seriously. Then came history class, where she answered every question correctly. The servants could hardly believe it. Their young lady was a genius. She smiled smugly. Of course she was. This was her second life, after all. Everything went perfectly smoothly until dance practice began. She immediately tripped over her own feet. The teacher said she was too tense, but no matter how hard she tried, her feet simply refused to listen. It was an absolute disaster, and even the teacher could only sigh in defeat. She collapsed onto the floor, utterly and completely defeated. Just then, a voice asked why she had stopped. She looked up and saw Patrick. He had returned. She could hardly believe her eyes. Brother Patrick. He pulled her into a warm embrace, then invited her to dance. He wanted to invite the most beautiful girl in the world. He held out his hand like Prince Charming, but our girl panicked because she remembered her two completely uncoordinated feet. He told her not to worry and to simply follow his lead. As they began to dance, everything felt like a dream. His hand was so warm and steady, and she moved lightly across the floor with her brother. From a distance, it looked incredibly elegant. But then Patrick grimaced. "Ow, Abby, you stepped on my foot." That was right. Reality was nowhere near that elegant, and for him, it was much more painful. But he was the best brother in the world and simply encouraged her to keep practicing. Our girl was so moved by his gentleness that tears welled in her eyes. Her fighting spirit was now burning. She would never bring shame to her family. She declared that she would not leave the dance room. But Patrick stopped her. He told her to take a break and gently patted her head. There was somewhere he wanted to take her. She worried that she was still grounded, but he had already handled their father. It was time to prepare her armor for social warfare, jewels and dresses. They were heading to the most famous jewelry shop in the imperial capital, Diamond Star. Our girl was stunned. This place was truly gorgeous. She remembered what her teacher had said. Dresses and jewels were a lady's weapons. She realized that this shopping trip was basically preparation for battle. Patrick could tell something was on her mind. He guessed exactly that she thought he had brought her here to defeat the other noble young ladies. He merely smiled and ruffled her hair. What a wonderful brother. But his next move was pure chaos. He directly ordered the clerk to send everything over. She begged him to stop. They already had a huge pile of clothes. He promised he would try, but his wicked grin said otherwise. They arrived at the jeweler's section, where the entire shop blazed with a maddening sparkle of jewels. Patrick explained that the shop owner was an old acquaintance of the family. Suddenly, he was called away on urgent business. He told her to browse as she liked while he was gone. A clerk showed her the finest bracelets and rings. They were beautiful, but what our girl truly needed was a necklace. Then she saw it, a breathtaking ruby necklace called the Scarlet Lady. The clerk enthusiastically praised it, saying it would surely suit her perfectly. Our girl was completely captivated. Just as she was about to ask for it, a loud voice interrupted her. "I want that necklace." A woman with fiery red hair stormed into the shop with her attendants. She declared that such a dazzling accessory suited her better. Our girl was stunned by her brazen arrogance. Then she suddenly realized that she knew that woman. That was Kara, the future empress and the main villainous noble lady of the story. Meanwhile, Patrick was outside dealing with a problem. His guards had caught a suspicious man. They reported that the man had tried to attack civilians with a strange weapon. Patrick asked to see the so-called weapon. He took the dark, sinister dagger. His eyes narrowed as he examined it. There was no magic. It was just an ordinary dagger. He ordered the man to be taken away. After the guards left, a new figure emerged from the woods. A mysterious silver-haired man appeared with a sly smile. He asked to have a word with the Duke. Patrick turned around, a flicker of recognition flashing in his eyes. Meet Peggy Lynch, Kara's companion and the story's ever-present spiteful noble lady. Her father was Kara's right-hand man, manipulating everything from behind scenes. She was basically a puppet in a world of power and desire, like a pretty doll placed on a shelf. She valued her future position as queen above everything else. Our girl remembered that in her previous life, they had hardly ever spoken, but every time they passed each other, Peggy would sneer at her. From Peggy's point of view, our heroine was merely another one of Karl's consorts, someone threatening her throne. In a flashback, Peggy demanded that the necklace be sent to her house. She pointed at the necklace without even glancing at the poor shop owner. She scolded the clerk for just standing there, putting on the full attitude of an arrogant bully. But the clerk stammered that someone else had been looking at it. That person was our girl. Peggy instantly became hostile. She took a confrontational stance and sneered that she had never seen her before, deciding that our girl must want the necklace too. She thought our girl was nothing but a nobody, just another desperate social climber trying to rise through the ranks with jewelry. The poor heroine merely stared at her. She silently endured the verbal humiliation. Peggy called her pathetic, saying she was trying to raise her social status with a little trinket. Our girl played the part of a frightened little mouse. Stepping backward, Peggy snorted smugly, saying she at least knew her place, and told her friends not to bother with this embarrassing farce. Then the group of villainous young ladies tossed their hair and left. But our girl only smiled sweetly. She had been acting the whole time. Peggy had fallen for it completely. She remembered that Karl had once described Peggy as a beautiful but vulgar vase. The description was absolutely perfect and vicious. An empty vase filled with a whole bottle of stagnant water from men. She also noticed Peggy's friend, Lorraine. Later, our girl went outside to get some fresh air. Suddenly, her brother called out to her. He asked why she was outside alone. He had heard that she was choosing a necklace. She sighed and said she had not been able to find the necklace destined for her. He looked somewhat worried. A servant delivered a box for the Lynch family. That stirred her memory. She explained what had happened. She said someone else had wanted the same necklace. She brushed it off lightly, but her brother's expression tightened. He immediately realized it was the Lynch family. Fury surged through him because he knew exactly how arrogant they were. He worried they would make things difficult for Abby at the banquet. He clenched his fists, already ready to fight for his little sister. He pondered what to do. Just then, a man appeared with a gift. This was sent by that person. He handed Abby a beautiful box. Her face was full of confusion. He told her to open it. Inside was the most breathtaking ruby necklace she had ever seen. It shone brilliantly and was absolutely a jewel of the highest quality. Late that night, our girl began her mission. The palace was empty. She quietly moved through the corridors, trying not to make a sound. Everything around her was eerily quiet. Suddenly, a noise nearly scared the soul out of her, but it was only a suit of armor. She scolded herself for being so easily startled. Time had already passed, but she was not the type to wait obediently. She decided to sneak illegally into the imperial palace again to search for the necklace. To do that, she had been practicing an invisibility spell, but progress had not gone well. Her magic was too weak, causing only part of her body to disappear, and she had accidentally terrified Maid. That caused rumors of the mansion being haunted to spread everywhere. But something felt wrong tonight. The entire situation felt like a trap. She had expected the Duke to come after her, but he was supposedly out subjugating monsters. She had no idea what he was thinking. She hurriedly searched for the necklace, but what she found was something else, a letter. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, a battle was raging. Karl was wounded, but he stood victorious beside the slain monsters. His knights complained that someone among them was slacking off. Karl looked over, his expression utterly displeased. It was Abner, lying on the ground and pretending to be dead. His friend slapped him awake. Abner claimed he was simply too weak to move. They bickered like an old married couple, and Abner proudly declared his lazy lifestyle. Suddenly, a giant beast roared, interrupting their chaotic quarrel. The knights drew their swords and reminded one another not to panic. One of them complained that they had only just returned, yet the Emperor had already sent them out here again. Another aide sneered that the Emperor was probably hoping Karl would die on the battlefield. Karl cast him an icy glance and warned him to watch his words. More monsters burst out from the bushes. It was an entire swarm of monsters. As his glowing red eyes flashed, Karl became a whirlwind of death. In an instant, he cut them all to pieces. His aide merely smiled smugly. That was His Highness's style. Why bother being cautious when he could just kill everything with one strike? After the battle ended, the knights were already ready to go home and eat dessert. As they walked, Karl received a report. A rival family had blown up a mine, but they had miscalculated and instead unearthed a huge vein of magic crystal. It was an extremely rare, or that could be used for magical tools. To mine it legally, they needed permission from the imperial family, and to obtain permission, they had to go through Karl. Everything was proceeding according to his grand plan. He thought of the upcoming banquet and smiled. The emperor liked lavish banquets. He treated them as chains to control the nobles. But Karl had other plans. He remembered that girl and the ruby necklace. He called out to his aide, "Hey, Abner, you don't have anything else to do you?" Abner lied to his face and said he had absolutely nothing. Back at the imperial palace, our girl held the letter. The letter had been written by him. It told the mysterious female mage to stop looking for the necklace and said that he had returned to the city and that they would meet at the banquet. The letter was addressed to Miss Cora. Her eyes widened in shock. He knew. He had discovered her identity. The day of the grand banquet finally arrived. A carriage traveled toward the solemn palace. Mechanical birds delivered invitations through the sky. A girl stepped down from the carriage carriage, dressed in red and breathtakingly beautiful. A gentleman held out his hand to her. They arrived at the palace, and it was even more magnificent than she remembered. She seemed to see an illusion of jewels flowing with light. It was as beautiful as it had been in her previous life. Inside the hall, flowers, fine food, and high society mingled into a lively whirlpool. Nobles danced and chatted everywhere. Court musicians created an elegant atmosphere. A magical lovebird machine was even predicting a new romance for a man and woman. All the noble young ladies lined up, eager to be the next to try. They giggled excitedly as they waited for their turn. But our heroine stood alone outside the crowd, looking thoughtful. She wondered how different this new path in life had become. Everything had already become completely different from her past. Though this place was beautiful, she still missed her quiet magic tower. But her top priority tonight was to find that person. He should have been here, yet he was nowhere to be seen. Then she saw Karl. Oh no, not him. She immediately entered stealth mode. Don't see me, don't see me. She snapped open her fan, trying to make herself invisible. Just then, the Emperor and Empress made their grand entrance. An attendant whispered that the crown prince was absent. The Emperor was very displeased. He mocked his son for not understanding etiquette and ordered the ball to begin as usual. Music rang out, and pairs of dancers poured onto the dance floor. Our girl stood to the side watching, feeling out of place. Was this really just a ball? Suddenly, a tremendous bang echoed through the hall. The heavy doors opened dramatically. Everyone turned their heads, whispering in shock. Her eyes widened when she saw who had arrived. It was him, Crown Prince Vyn, descending like a god of war. He casually apologized for being late, and despite being covered in blood, he was still shockingly handsome. That's right, you heard correctly. There was blood on his uniform. The noble young lady started screaming so loudly they nearly lifted the roof. He merely curved his lips into a smile and said there was no need to panic. It was only monster blood. Our girl watched him, completely unmoved by the chaos. The Emperor, however, was so furious he was nearly about to burst a blood vessel. The guards flew into a rage, rebuking Vyn for daring to appear fully armed and covered in blood. But Vyn simply knelt, entirely unaffected. He reported that he had merely been carrying out orders and clearing monsters for the Empire. Absolutely ruthless. The nobles whispered among themselves. After all, he had only been fulfilling his duty. Vyn tried to excuse himself, ready to leave this disastrous banquet. He turned his back on the Emperor, which was the ultimate power move. But the Emperor was not done humiliating him. With a smile so sugary it was sickening, he called out to him, "You have worked hard. At least dance once before you leave." Oh, this was pure malice. Vyn's heart thudded heavily with anger. The Emperor was enjoying every second of it. This father and son were the very definition of a toxic relationship. One girl remembered this scene. The Emperor forced him to dance in order to humiliate him. And of course, no young lady wanted to dance with someone covered in monster entrails. This cruel game had happened many times before. The young ladies were all afraid of him. A greedy father tried to push his daughter forward, hoping to make her the next empress, but she trembled all over, utterly terrified by the prince's aura. She froze in place. The Emperor merely sneered, waiting to enjoy the show. Vyn slowly turned around, his crimson eyes sweeping over the crowd. The entire hall held its breath. Who would he choose? Everyone stared at him, and the pressure was immense. Then our girl realized he was looking straight at her. He began walking in her direction. Her mind screamed wildly, "Don't come over here." But it was already too late. He stood before her. "Beautiful lady, may I have the honor of this dance?" She tried to refuse, but he leaned closer. "The necklace you're wearing. Red suits you." His hand flashed, and she saw a familiar red gem. Her necklace. How did he know about her necklace? That red diamond was a secret gift. She remembered when her brother had given it to her, and now Vyn was holding a part of it in his hand. This was nothing less than a blatant threat. She gritted her teeth and agreed. She had been threatened. He took her hand, and she wondered what kind of trick he was playing. He was definitely threatening her with that red necklace. On top of that letter, he must know her true identity. This entire thing was a test. That bastard. Fine, she would dance, and she would absolutely step on his feet. The music began, and they started to move. She aimed for his boots and stepped down, but he dodged with unbelievable grace. He dodged again. Ugh, this was exhausting. She was already completely fed up with his tricks, but she was shocked to realize that he was an exceptionally skilled dancer. And unlike last time, there was no magical electric shock sensation. It must have been because of his gloves. He effortlessly guided her across the dance floor. She felt like a kite in his hands. The Emperor was clearly very displeased by this. The Empress looked just as displeased. Suddenly, he spun Abby around with theatrical flair. He pulled her into his arms and dipped her in a heart-stopping move. Standing together, the two of them looked breathtaking. The crowd gasped in awe. He curled his lips into a smile. You should pay more attention to your dance partner. She was furious, but damn it, she had absolutely no resistance to that handsome face. He asked why she had accepted his invitation. She lied and said it was because he had invited her. You should have refused me like the other ladies. Was it because I mentioned that red necklace? She immediately made up a story. Yes, my brother gave it to me. It is an honor to dance with you. A perfect excuse. He smiled faintly, clearly not believing her at all. An honor? But you are no ordinary noblewoman, are you? He knew. He absolutely knew. The necklace was not a fake, and by saying that, he had confirmed her identity as a mage. He mentioned that her mother had once been a great mage. Abby played dumb. I have no talent for magic, she said, which was technically true. You are more interesting and smarter than I imagined, Vyn praised her. Then the music suddenly changed. This is the final dance, Vyn whispered, pulling her closer. Everyone else had already left the dance floor. This was the finale, a solo dance, and our poor girl was simply relieved that it was finally almost over. The other ladies were burning with jealousy. Some could not even hide their bitter sarcasm. Suddenly, a strange humming filled the air. The divination machine went out of control, and mechanical birds burst out of the box. They flew through the hall, shining with brilliant light. As the flock surged toward them, Vyn protectively pulled Abby behind him. Stay behind me. Was this an attack? Who was their target? His sharp gaze analyzed the situation, while our girl realized the machine was not broken. The flock suddenly exploded into fireworks, and red rose petals poured down over them like a waterfall. What on earth was going on? Rose petals appeared magically in our girl's hands. She knew everyone had been stunned by this magnificent magic show, but she could not help suspecting the prince's true purpose. He simply stood there, cold and handsome, while the nobles were completely captivated by the dramatic performance. They were told that this kind of magic would only bloom when one met their destined partner, and the crowd fully believed the two of them were meant to be together. But our girl was completely confused, and the prince was deathly silent. The entire hall fell quiet, and the nobles whispered uneasily. And guess what? The emperor was already exploding with rage. He roared, demanding to know what this was supposed to mean. He pointed an accusing finger, his face twisted with fury. The emperor's aura erupted, but the prince's dark power immediately roared back in response. The poor heroine could only watch this royal drama unfold. The prince said that no matter how he answered, his father had already made up his mind. Then he struck another cruel blow, saying that his own opinion was just as irrelevant. The emperor called the situation utterly absurd. The prince merely stood there, completely unmoved by the chaos. Suddenly, a tiny mechanical lovebird fluttered over. It chirped and landed right in his gloved hand. So all of this had simply been the work of a clever magical machine. The prince announced that his task was complete and that he had had enough of the banquet. Then the bird flew toward our girl, and she thanked it for its hard work. But Vyn stopped her, saying that although she supposedly knew nothing about magic, she could still interpret a magical machine. She realized he was hinting at her secret. This man was truly audacious. He turned and left, leaving her completely bewildered. The entire night felt like a mad dream. Before long, rumors spread like wildfire, and a newspaper was slammed heavily onto a table. The headline was shocking. Abby's father was furious. With his arms folded, he scolded her in dissatisfaction for wasting such a good opportunity and letting the Kara family steal the spotlight. He asked if she was still obsessing over those stupid rumors. She clenched her fists and said it was all nonsense. Her father cruelly reminded her that the family was paying for her luxurious life. He wanted her to reflect on her behavior, since she was the one who had chosen Vyn. He called her a useless daughter, a double blow. Abby's eyes filled with tears of pure rage and jealousy. She screamed and cursed that Kara bitch, then furiously smashed a vase. Her maid calmly told her not to worry about them getting carried away, because the higher they climbed, the more painful the fall would be. Chilling. Meanwhile, at the Kara family's mine, things were improving. The miners had just completed a massive excavation and had even discovered rare gemstones. But suddenly, the entire mine began shaking violently. A worker looked up in confusion toward the rumbling sound. He shouted for everyone to be careful, because the entrance was beginning to collapse. Huge rocks and clouds of dust exploded out of the mine shaft, and horses panicked, galloping wildly toward the disaster site. The entire mine had collapsed. There were casualties everywhere, and the survivors cried out in relief when their lord finally arrived. It was Kara's brother, the young duke. His expression was grave. It had happened again. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the crown prince welcomed his aide. Pierce. The prince stood alone in a vast office. He told Pierce to look at the documents on his desk. There were 3 matters that required his attention. The first was an intelligence report about the Kara family's mine. After blowing up the mine, the culprit had killed himself. The Lang family was covering their tracks. Pierce looked very pleased, because he was the one who had ensured no evidence remained. He smiled smugly, proud of having forced their enemies into a difficult position. The second document was a newspaper. It contained that sensational article claiming the prince and our girl were a match made in heaven. Pierce reminded the prince that his goal was to help people, not walk into the abyss. He warned that the emperor's condition was worsening and that they did not have much time left. But this had been their plan all along, using the ruby necklace as bait. That way, Kara would have no choice but to accept the invitation, and now those rumors would become both their shield and their spear. This man was truly a master strategist. He predicted that the Kara family would come to them of their own accord. Right on time, there was a knock at the door. Our girl thought about the meaning of hugs. Her father's embrace was safe and full of love. Her eldest brother's hug was warm and considerate. He was the perfect model of an older brother. Then there was her second brother's hug, which was basically a deadly chokehold. He immediately apologized with a face full of smiles and charm, claiming that he had simply been too excited to see her. This was her brother, Aaron Kara, a little eccentric. And by eccentric, she meant that he had been a political genius at 8 years old, a child prodigy with extremely strong opinions. He gave her a gift, one he had traveled the world to find. He asked somewhat nervously whether she liked it. Of course she did. It was beautiful. She held the gorgeous carousel snow globe, and he breathed a sigh of relief, happy that she was pleased. But our girl knew her brother would always treat her like a child. She took his hand and said she had a gift for him too. He was utterly shocked. "You have something for me?" he asked in surprise. The shadow of her true chaos began to show. Suddenly, the scene cut to Aaron completely breaking down. "My little sister absolutely cannot get married," he shouted. But his brother was a wall of logic, saying that she wanted it herself and that the man was very handsome. He told Aaron to stop complaining. He told him to think of an actual solution. The brothers realized the prince was coming to meet their father. Aaron worried that Abby was far too innocent. She had never seen how terrible men could be. So he came up with a chaotic plan: take her on arranged dates. He prepared an entire lineup of men for her to see, from poor to rich, gathering every kind of terrible suitor. He was determined to prove his point. And so this disastrous dating session began in a luxury hotel. Aaron looked far too pleased with himself. Even the butler was shocked by how absurd he was being. The interview process began. The first candidate was a watchmaker named Wood. He promised that any woman who married him would be happy, but Aaron quietly revealed that he was a gambling addict drowning in debt. Our girl was completely baffled. Aaron coldly dismissed him. The next candidate was an apprentice knight. He boasted about his honesty and strength, but his weakness was that he was a 30-year-old man-child who still lived with his father. Our girl's face turned completely to stone. Aaron called for the next one. The final man was a suffering artist who looked as if he were about to cry. The poor heroine finally had enough and pointed out Aaron's problem on the spot. She told him to stop interfering so much. She declared that she needed to get to know men for herself. She wanted to begin by having a proper conversation with Count Katie. Aaron tried to protest, but then he dropped a bombshell. 2 of the family's ruby mines had been blown up. Our girl was horrified. "Who did it?" she demanded. They suspected it was the dirty work of the Lang family. Those mines were their most important assets. Without them, their family would be left with nothing but an empty title. This might be the beginning of their decline. The brothers knew they had to meet the rival family and intimidate them. And the person they had no choice but to meet was the notorious, cold-hearted Duke Vyn. Suddenly, our girl understood everything. A political marriage was the only way to secure the family's future. Our girl stared at the mysterious figure in the chair. That was definitely Karl's hairstyle, but what exactly was she supposed to say? She quickly reviewed his information in her mind. Karl Stewart, 15 years old, the second prince. but she knew what he would become in the future. He would become the ruthless emperor of the Siren Empire. And the biggest bombshell was that, just like her, he remembered his previous life. So her instinct had been right. Karl had been reborn too. She wondered if some goddess had taken pity on them. But in her case, returning to the past had been driven by a magic circle. A massive wave of power had brought her back to the present. Karl, on the other hand, seemed to be enjoying his second chance. Suddenly, her own magic crackled awake. She warned him that killing her now would not change the future he wanted. But Karl only sneered and threatened her entire family instead. She easily blocked his magic, and he immediately fixed his gaze on her necklace. He mocked her, asking whether she was curious about his own magical pendant. He revealed his plan to use magical crystals to destroy her family's legacy. Our girl remained completely unmoved. "Thank you for the information, but I still will not help you." In fact, she told him that someone else was far more suited to sit on the throne than he was. He sneered, knowing she meant his brother Vyn. He described his brother as handsome, cold, and gentle to everyone, but his smug expression hinted that this perfect prince had a darker side. Later, an attendant told her that the crown prince's meeting had been postponed. Speak of the devil, His Highness himself had arrived. It was Crown Prince Vyn, the very man she wanted most to avoid. He was immediately guided up the stairs. He turned and sincerely apologized for being late, and our girl met those sharp crimson eyes. Yes, this was indeed Crown Prince Vyn. It seemed this conversation could not be avoided. She remembered that her father had once discussed a political marriage. He was very worried that Vyn was not taking her seriously, but she had bluffed wildly and lied, saying she had seen through all of Vyn's tricks. Forcing herself to stay calm, she assured her father that they would be happy. Her father was still angry, convinced that Vyn was scheming against her. And at that very moment, Vyn was actually eavesdropping on them. But he was not the only one eavesdropping. Our girl was listening too, and she heard the word engagement. A brilliant and chaotic idea took shape in her mind. If she became the crown prince's fiancée, she would be able to investigate him freely. She could make sure Vyn became emperor and change the entire course of history. On top of that, it would also put her in the perfect position to launch a few surprise attacks on Karl. She boldly entered the room and interrupted them. She gave an elegant curtsy, then made her move. She would accept his request, but on one condition. The crown prince was shocked. "You mean," with a sharp smile, she explained, "I am willing to become engaged to you." She looked radiant and confident, while her poor father collapsed in the background. The Duke clutched his chest, feeling as if he was truly about to have a heart attack. After the chaos at the banquet, the Duke fell into contemplative silence. The narration tells us that Lady Abby and the Duke had a serious conversation. He sat in his office, looking completely crushed by this political mess. Elsewhere, a pair of sharp eyes was watching. It was Abby's brother, and he did not look happy at all. In another room, our girl and her father sat together in an unimaginably awkward silence. Abby finally broke the ice by pointing out that his tea had gone cold. She begged him to say everything on his mind. He sighed heavily and lamented that his daughter had grown up too quickly. The poor man was simply worried about her. He knew how difficult her situation was, especially regarding Prince Vyn. Meanwhile, her brother gave an order to a maid. He told her to just leave the clothes and said he did not want to be disturbed. But then he froze because our girl appeared wearing a yellow dress and looking just like a ray of sunshine. He was completely stunned by her radiance. Outside the mansion gates, a line of carriages had formed. Her brother explained that every minor noble had now crawled out of the corners, and ever since the engagement rumors began, they all wanted to curry favor with her. He warned her that the tabloids were constantly printing gossip, and that some of these visitors were definitely not here to make friends. Later, at the tea party, our poor heroine could already feel the hostile atmosphere. She knew these ladies probably thought terribly of her, and she was right. She was sitting right there, yet they openly talked about her. Two especially vicious ladies took the lead, hiding behind their fans as they called her gloomy and rude. Our girl desperately held herself back from causing a scene. She knew the rumors had started as something small, but now they had turned into a full-blown smear campaign. The newspapers now claimed that she had shamelessly pursued the prince, and one of the main gossip mongers was, of course, one of Peggy's old friends. Our girl was practically surrounded by vipers. But then, an unexpected ally spoke up, mocking the gossipers for their lack of manners. Abby was surprised, but could not help agreeing. Still, she remained wary. Why was Peggy's friend suddenly speaking up for her? The girl smiled and told Abby not to be nervous. She claimed she had only come to apologize on Peggy's behalf. She explained that Peggy's ambitions had all been part of her father's plan. Then she dropped a bombshell. "I like you better than her." Our girl was completely confused, but before she could react, a new guest made a grand entrance. All eyes turned to the outrageously flamboyant Miss Lynch. The other ladies immediately began gushing over her dress and the floral decorations on it. The very gossipers who had been slandering Abby moments ago were now showering this new girl with flattery. The mysterious woman who had just spoken to Abby merely sneered. Miss Lang smugly accepted the compliments. In her heart, she thought, "Yes, praise me more." This one certainly had plenty of self-awareness. The camera then focused on a beautiful face, and you immediately knew that this thing was about to become the center of some drama. In the Siren Empire, young ladies and flowers were practically inseparable. This was all thanks to the goddess Flora. They even held a grand festival to celebrate her blessings. The noble ladies all eagerly awaited the Flora Festival. The entire city would be decorated, and everyone would come out to celebrate. Legend said that ancient empresses could guide flowers into bloom, but that power was something the emperor's 3 wives now seemed not to possess. One gossiping lady said entirely the wrong thing. She said something she should not have, and everyone froze, looking toward Miss Karate. She only smiled and reminded everyone that both the Empress and Lorraine came from that family. Then she brought up a spicy rumor, saying there was a girl who could make flowers bloom along with her asterisk. The other ladies were startled by the ominous story. Lorraine asked why they looked so worried, since it was only a rumor. Just then, another lady, Peggy, turned around with a smug smile. She suggested using a special vase to verify the rumor. All they had to do was insert the flower stem. It was a simple test, yet the ladies all hesitated, unwilling to take part. In this obvious trap, Lorraine insisted it was a rare and amusing opportunity, but the room instantly fell deathly silent. No one wanted to be the first to fail this ridiculous test. Miss Karate pretended to be disappointed in herself. "Oh, it seems I'm not suited to be Empress. How tragic." Poor heroine Abby tried to comfort her. The other ladies also tried their luck with the vase, but nothing happened. Truly, nothing at all. Then Peggy volunteered herself. Acting as if she had never tried it before, she stepped forward confidently to make her attempt. She inserted the flower stem into the vase, and wow, a perfect rose immediately bloomed. The girls nearly lost their minds, while Peggy acted utterly shocked. "Oh my, how astonishing." But this was all part of her plan to show off. Lorraine turned to our Abby. "Why don't you try to?" Abby was suddenly pushed into the spotlight. Everyone was looking at her. She had no choice but to try. She inserted the flower stem into the vase. A huge cluster of beautiful red roses suddenly burst into bloom. Lorraine was stunned. Abby actually had that power too. But Peggy shouted, "Look," and pointed. The flowers began to wither and die. As the petals fell, the ladies were all terrified. A dark, ominous energy enveloped everyone, and they all stared at the dead flowers. Lorraine immediately accused Abby of being cursed, and the other ladies echoed her, saying this meant the crown prince had been deceived. Peggy merely sneered in triumph. Her plan had worked perfectly, but Abby calmly apologized for breaking the machine. Then, with a ruthless smile, she said she would take responsibility and fix it. She knew this was a trap, but they had no idea who they had provoked. Our girl released her true power. Immense magic surged from her hand, and from the withered stems, gorgeous, ethereal blue roses bloomed. Peggy and Lorraine were rendered completely speechless. This cannot be real. But Abby handled it calmly, blaming everything on the vase's special function. She claimed she must have touched the bottom and activated a hidden feature. After completely turning the situation around, she made an elegant exit. She left everyone standing there, each of them dumbfounded. Peggy trembled with rage. Abby had utterly humiliated her. She stared at those beautiful blue roses and, in a chaotic fury, smashed the entire table. That priceless vase shattered into countless pieces. A few days later, we see the emperor receiving mountains of gifts. His attendant brought him a table full of treasures from overseas. The attendant pointed out that one ruby looked very much like Miss Emily's eyes. The Emperor gave a cold smile. Clearly, he had been spending a lot of time with her lately. He asked what the Crown Prince had been doing recently. The attendant reported that the prince was still trying to visit Duke Kara's illegitimate daughter. The Emperor flew into a rage, unable to believe his son was chasing after that girl. Does he think I'm a fool? The attendant recalled that the prince had once met a commoner woman. He slyly hinted that perhaps His Highness's true interest was in her. This clever attendant knew exactly which buttons to press. The Emperor merely scoffed, completely dismissing the idea. Back at the mansion, our girl was drowning in mail. A maid brought in a huge stack of letters. Abby groaned. Don't tell me these are tea party invitations again. Ever since Peggy's banquet, she had been flooded with invitations. She pretended to cough and told the maid to refuse them all. But the maid held up one very special letter with the imperial seal on it. She squealed, thinking it was a love letter from the Crown Prince. But Abby narrowed her eyes. She recognized the patterns: the moon, a ruby, and a tall tower. This was no love letter. It was a summons. That night, she headed to a gloomy tower. The Crown Prince was waiting for her on the balcony. He greeted her as Miss Mage, or rather, Miss Abigail. Our girl arrived, wearing a hooded cloak. She pointed out that his letter this time had not been quite so poetic. She removed her hood, revealing her face. They stood on a balcony overlooking the kingdom, and he revealed the true reason secrecy was necessary. I'm being followed. His father's spies have been following him everywhere. If he suddenly disappeared, it would only make them more suspicious. But thanks to her invisibility spell, they could not see her. He had used her real name on the invitation, so he would have a reasonable excuse. She was not pleased. She had thought her identity was a secret. He confirmed that he knew who she was, and that this did not help their cooperation. He still had questions to ask her. She took a deep breath, realizing he had the upper hand. He gave a cold smile. He was quite good at turning the tables, wasn't he? Now that he knew her identity, he had more leverage over her. But she had still come because she still needed to retrieve that necklace. He admitted that meeting her was just as risky for him. What if she was powerful enough to break the restrictions on his memory? Everything he had done so far would be for nothing. He held out the necklace. Do you want to try? The challenge had been laid before her. His red eyes were faintly glowing. He slowly placed the necklace in her hand, and a burst of lightning-like energy erupted between them. Just like before, the girl held the necklace, her expression firm with determination. She clenched it, preparing to conduct a small experiment. Her friend had reminded her that her magic did not work on him, but she had to confirm it for herself. Suddenly, a gust of wind stirred the trees. The guard below noticed absolutely nothing. A magical gale swept across the balcony. Our girl summoned a wind spirit, but as it approached him, the magic simply dispersed. She tried an even stronger spell. An eagle formed from pure magic. She sent it flying straight at him, and once again, it shattered into nothingness. Magic simply vanished around him like that. She had never seen anything like this. Our girl decided to investigate up close. She recalled reading about this in an ancient magic book. There were only two ways to nullify magic. Either two powerful spells canceled each other out, or the person possessed a rare and fragile immunity. Yet it did not seem to fit either case. Then she remembered the sparks when their hands had touched. She asked him a very bold question. May we hold hands? Without hesitation, he simply said, go ahead. He extended his hand, surprising her. He admitted that he was curious too. He wanted to know whether he would feel the same spark again. They clasped hands, and the atmosphere grew electrically tense. But there was nothing, absolutely no reaction at all. Confused, she wondered, did I do it wrong? She squeezed his hand with all her strength, but there was still no reaction. Our poor girl was utterly confused, and he even had the nerve to smirk and say she was surprisingly strong. How cruel. She racked her brain, trying to figure it all out. She remembered holding his hand at the banquet. Back then, there had been no strange sensation between them. Maybe she had simply overthought it, but he stared at her intensely. He told her that he had indeed felt the spark, like a current of energy passing through his fingers. He asked if she had felt it too, then asked, what about this? He removed his glove. Our girl suddenly understood. It was the glove. Magic should not be blocked by clothing, but his body was special. He asked her to try again. She agreed, while wondering why he always wore gloves. This time, their bare hands touched, and then, boom, She felt it. It was a torrent of pure, chaotic magic. Our girl was completely overwhelmed. She finally understood his power. That magic was enormous, with an intensity she had never encountered before. But immediately, the warmth turned sharp and painful. She yanked her hand back in agony. Then she trembled and collapsed to the ground. His magic was like thousands upon thousands of steel needles. That raw, frenzied power had pierced straight through her. He immediately rushed to her side in concern. He looked at his own hand and apologized to her. She insisted that she was fine, only caught off guard. She realized what a heavy burden his magic was. He revealed that she was the first mage ever to touch his bare palm. He said he knew her strength, and now she also knew the danger he was in. She decided it was time to leave. She thanked him for returning the necklace, then said goodbye. As she drifted away, pity welled up in her heart. Had he always had to endure all of this alone? He watched her leave and murmured, "See you next time." After she left, he could no longer see her. He stood there in silence for a while. Then the backlash struck violently. He staggered, covering his mouth, and collapsed against the railing. Coughing violently, he cursed under his breath as blood flowed from his lips. He sensed someone approaching and growled, "Who's there?" We flash back to his tragic childhood. A maid screamed in pain after touching him, her hand blackened and burned. The young prince could only watch in horror as the other servants whispered that he was cursed. His very existence was a threat to others. He was forced into painful isolation. His power did not only hurt others, it hurt him too. A priest tried to save him through a sacred ritual, but that dazzling light was pure torment to him. He screamed in agony as the curse swirled around him, bringing immense pain. His father, the emperor, watched from the side. Even the archmage of the tower was helpless. He said magic was of no use against the prince's condition. The young boy lay in bed with an unrelenting fever, while his own father looked at him with cold indifference. He thought perhaps it would be better if he died. But then he saw his mother. She sat by his bed and gently stroked his face. She was the most precious person in his life. She held him tightly, hoping he would grow up strong. Her gentle touch was everything. She was like a beacon of hope in his dark world. She told him to take good care of himself. Her love gave him the will to live. It was because of her that he survived that fever. But back in the present, he could barely hold on. The chaotic magic was still tearing through his body. His gloved hand was stained with his own blood. He could barely control the energy inside him. He forced himself to stand, trying to hide his pain, but then he heard footsteps. It was his younger brother, Karl. Vyn weakly turned back to look. Karl asked if he still had the strength to talk, then helped his brother up. Karl promised he would not tell anyone about his condition. Vyn was frustrated that he had been seen like this, while his younger brother supported his weight. But then he could not help chuckling softly. He ruffled Karl's hair and teased him, saying he had grown up. Karl pouted and said he would be even taller soon. Vyn only gave a sad, knowing smile. Karl's heart ached terribly for his brother, and he looked at him with unbearable sadness. If only someone could save him from his cursed fate. Meanwhile, back in her room, our girl was celebrating getting the real necklace back. Happily, she swapped it with the fake necklace and carefully put the precious artifact away. With this, her mission was finally over. But just as she relaxed, the door was suddenly shoved open. An imposing figure stood in the doorway. The girl froze as she heard a voice from the entrance. She slowly turned her head, and her heart sank instantly. "Father." Her father stood there, radiating pure disappointment. He said nothing except, "Come to my room." He turned away, giving her no room to argue. She followed him through the long, silent corridor, each step echoing like doom. She immediately regretted everything. This had been a huge mistake. She had only let her guard down because she was happy to be home. The tension in his study was thick enough to cut with a knife. He calmly poured her a cup of tea, which somehow made it even more terrifying. It reminded her of when she was a little girl, back when he had rarely indulged her. He said sarcastically that it was only midnight now, far past her 9 o'clock curfew. Then he praised her, saying that even when sneaking out, she did it with such noble etiquette. That vicious counterattack sent chills down her spine. She nervously asked if he was angry, even trying to give him a small, hopeful smile. But it was completely useless. Angry, he asked calmly. Then the breakdown began. My daughter actually disobeyed me. He fully entered dramatic father mode. He lamented that they had grown distant and could not believe she had snuck out in the middle of the night. Then his expression returned to a calm smile. But our girl was not fooled for even a second. He became serious and demanded that she tell him where she had gone. She remained completely silent, knowing that anything she said would only dig the hole deeper. The silence was deafening. Then he dropped the bombshell. "I have been watching you from the moment you left your room." He had gone into her room and seen everything. The open window, the shoes scattered everywhere, and the traces of magic left behind. He knew she had stolen the necklace to practice magic. "What exactly did you do?" he demanded. Cornered, she finally broke down and admitted that she had gone out. His mind immediately jumped to the worst possible conclusion. Was it the Crown Prince? He completely lost control and began shouting about that boy. Our poor heroine broke out in a cold sweat. Father burned with fury, convinced that the prince he had rejected was now making a move on his daughter. She desperately asked why he would think it was him. He listed the evidence. She had gone out late at night, worn a plain dress, and her cheeks were flushed from strenuous activity. Good heavens, Father, could you please not get the wrong idea? He was absolutely convinced that she had fallen into a playboy's trap. He imagined her being lured into a trap. "I will not let you be deceived by a bad man," he declared. Then he grounded her. "You are not allowed to go out at night anymore." She mischievously asked, "What about during the day?" Huge mistake. During the day, you will stay with your brother too. And so her new life began, now accompanied by a permanent and extremely irritable bodyguard. Her brother looked like he would rather be anywhere else, while our girl tried to focus on her art lesson. She asked him if he did not have something more important to do. He sneered and said Father's order was to watch her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He showed her his masterpiece, a strange little bug drawing. Then he told her to follow him after class. She said she had never agreed to that, but he refused to accept no for an answer. He glanced at her painting, was so shocked that he immediately changed the subject. "Let's talk about going out instead," he stammered. They arrived in front of a strangely shaped building. Inside, her brother was shouting at a man, telling him to apologize. Our girl recognized him as the man from the banquet. She asked what this place was and learned that it was a prop shop. And to her surprise, her brother was the owner. She pieced the clues together and asked whether the lovebirds from the banquet had come from here. Her brother stammered, completely caught. It turned out his employee had rented those chaotic birds to the crown prince to help him pursue his sister, resulting in a huge scandal. "But this was about my sister," her brother roared, furious. The employee explained that the prince had arrived with a portrait and a massive pile of cash. What else was he supposed to do? Her brother slammed the table in anger. But our girl was unexpectedly calm. She had another question and pointed at the mechanical bird. Her brother explained that it had been made by a highly skilled and very mysterious mage partner. She then asked about another invention by that mage. Her mind began connecting the clues. Could this mysterious mage be someone she knew? She praised his shop, but also knew he must have brought her here for a more important reason. He grinned and snapped his fingers. His employee unfurled a huge blueprint. The plan was to open a new jewelry shop called Tiamo. His idea was to use lower quality gems to make fashionable jewelry that everyone could afford. He revealed that he would also be working with Count Sterling and his sister. She immediately understood. This was for their family's damaged minds. Their income had taken a severe hit, and he was trying to find a new way to support the family. She asked what he needed her to do. He put on his cutest expression and said, the word she had expected was money. She had known it all along. But since he could not use the family funds, he needed her to bring an investment from Crown Prince Vyn. She pointed out that if they did business with the royal family, Father really would throw them into prison. But she had an idea. They could use the broken rubies from the mine as accents for floral-themed jewelry. It would be just in time for the Flora Festival. Then she laid out her conditions. If he wanted her help and her money-making ideas, she wanted shares, and she wanted a say in the company. Our girl was no fool. She was a businesswoman, and she sealed the deal with a purely fierce, confident stare. The girl headed to the enormous Pharaoh library in search of a certain person. She found Prince Karl leisurely reading a book about torture devices. Well, that was a little frightening, but at least he had a hobby. He was completely absorbed in it. He did not even notice her. Abby was furious. After all this time, he was just ignoring her. She casually picked up a book as an excuse. Holding the dream of the tragic prince in her hands, she made her move. At last, he looked up. I thought you would never approach me on your own. Miss Abby, that smug little smile of his said he had known she was there from the very beginning. She pretended to be calm and claimed this was the only seat left. He immediately exposed her shameless lie. She simply told him to be quiet and read. The silence between them was deafening. Karl was utterly baffled. This woman was getting more reckless by the day. At last, he could not hold back and told her to say what she wanted. He admitted that in the past few lives, he had enjoyed her chaotic energy. When he recalled it, his expression even looked a little nostalgic. She shot back by asking whether he was enjoying his life now as the Shadow Prince. He leaned back. He looked incredibly pleased with himself. I could not be enjoying it more, he said with a grin. She asked whether he was dreaming now. He said yes, and his smile turned a little sly. He had dreamed of his wedding with Peggy, except the Peggy in the dream looked murderous. He chuckled at the memory, but then his face darkened because he had also dreamed of his brother's death. It was a cold vision of the crown prince collapsing. He remembered a mysterious woman in black. Who was she? The memory was a blur of shadows. That vision shattered in his mind. The backlash from the spiritual vision struck him hard. He clutched his head and groaned in pain. Our girl immediately reached out and cast healing magic. She told him that trying to recall the past was placing a tremendous strain on his body. Then she began teasing him about his dreams and his relationship with Peggy. He instantly became guarded. Why do you care? Are you going to marry him soon? He smiled, but there was no laughter in his eyes. I have not agreed to that yet. She said it coldly. Then he dropped a bombshell. The reason Peggy hated him was that his mother had executed Peggy's mother. Abby was completely stunned by the truth, but she quickly regained her composure. He commented on that, then began denouncing the royal family. He said the old woman was vain, and the emperor was a hopeless womanizer. He warned her not to believe in the emperor's love for the empress. Then he suddenly stopped. What did you come here for? She cleared her throat and tried hard to look innocent. To borrow money. A whole lot of money. He froze. She immediately began threatening him, revealing that she knew where he hid his treasures, and that she also knew about his second hiding place beneath the stairs in the council hall. The prince started sweating. And the one in your bedroom, she added with a sly smile. Shut up, he cried, completely falling apart from embarrassment. In a low voice, he asked why a noble lady needed cash for business. As she announced her plan, she took out a contract and even offered her own magic as part of the deal. He realized this was less of a proposal and more of a threat. Sign it, she ordered him, radiating full businesswoman energy. He took the scroll, amused by her boldness. But as he kept reading, his expression turned to shock. This business plan was actually excellent. He sincerely admired our girl's mind. Later, our girl went to meet another suitor. It was Sterling Carty, and he was asking her on a date. Liz, his sibling, was about to lose her mind. Abby was just as confused. A date. So, suddenly, he confessed that he had fallen in love with her at first sight. He began turning on the charm, listing his assets and future titles. He told her that he was a better choice than the crown prince. Would you allow me to court you? He asked with complete confidence. Our poor girl completely panicked. How was she supposed to answer something like that? Liz exploded, shouting at her brother and scolding him for pulling this stunt. Suddenly, a new voice cut in. A woman stepped out of the carriage. Do not forget why the two of us came here. Her voice was cold. She introduced herself as Liz Carty, Sterling's younger sister. Then she playfully told Abby that she supported the relationship. Peggy absolutely could not accept it. The tense business meeting finally began. Sterling played the perfect gentleman. As they walked, Abby recalled the warning Liz had given her. If you continue associating with us, misfortune will befall you. Was she talking about the original villainess, Lorraine, or me? Liz's expression was tense, but she quickly put on a brilliant smile again. The change was so fast that everyone nearly got whiplash. Abby was impressed. This girl's control over her expressions was ridiculous. But before the business could begin, Peggy interrupted. She apologized for the matchmaking farce. Then she immediately warned Sterling to stay away from Abby, going fully into overprotective sibling mode. Sterling only smiled and called himself a harmless admirer. He said that if it were for his younger sister Liz, he would do the same. A servant brought out the flower crown the Empress was supposed to wear at the upcoming festival. It was a magnificent ruby set made by their rival, Diamond Star. Liz questioned their plan to have the new brand Tiamo make the flower crown. Abby confirmed that it would be tremendous publicity. But Liz pointed out that tradition required the flower crown to include rubies, and that it had to be made by Diamond Star. It was an impossible task. Liz called the plan unrealistic. Sterling agreed as well, saying that a new shop could not shoulder such responsibility. Peggy knew it would be difficult, but she had a trump card. The flower crown is not for the Empress, she revealed. Liz's eyes widened in understanding. Abby smiled. She remembered the maid's gossip. This year's goddess of flowers would not be the Empress. This was an unprecedented opportunity for them. The flower crown they designed would be presented to the new goddess of flowers. And Abby was looking right at her. Isn't that right, Miss Liz? Peggy was shocked that the Emperor would actually change tradition. Sterling seized the opportunity and invited Abby to the opera. He said the most beautiful performer in the Empire would be taking the stage there. It was the perfect place to make an appearance and promote their jewelry. Will you go? He asked, while Liz watched her intently. Meanwhile, in the imperial palace, the crown prince gazed into the night. He murmured a name. Florinda. The atmosphere in the grand throne room was tense. The Emperor had personally come to greet the newly arrived guests. He welcomed the honored visitors from the Siren Empire. An envoy from the Siren Empire bowed respectfully. He was honored that His Majesty the Emperor had come in person, though he had expected the Crown Prince. The Emperor gave a false smile. Then he dropped a bombshell. The Crown Prince would not be coming. Meanwhile, far away, a lone figure rode through the forest. It was our boy, Crown Prince Vyn. He yanked the reins, bringing the horse to a sudden stop. His expression was dark. His attendant asked why he had stopped. Vyn knew they would not make it back in time. The attendant blamed himself for not capturing the magical beast faster. But Vyn knew the truth. This had all been his father's plan. No matter what, the palace would stop him. The guard would block the palace gates. The Emperor had sent him away so he could make some shady deal with the delegation. But this was not just business. It was also pure, vicious, petty hatred. He recalled his childhood when he had looked up at his father. He asked whether his father loved him at all or whether he loved his mother. The Emperor merely turned his back, his only words icy cold. Get out of my sight. That darkness had followed Vyn ever since. His attendant's call pulled him back from the memory. Vyn only said, let's go, but not to the manor. He had another plan. He was going to the opera house. At the luxurious Vermilion Parrot Opera House, the banquet was about to begin. Tonight's star was the beautiful Florinda. Dressed in red, she was as gorgeous as a vision, captivating the entire audience. Her song told of lies and false glory, a tragedy woven from beautiful deceptions. Watching from a private box was none other than Prince Vyn. He knew that the leading actress, Lady Emily, was the current subject of heated gossip in high society. He glanced at the program. This opera was about a poor girl who became a fake noblewoman. But Vyn knew the real story. This actress was his father's new mistress. He remembered meeting her a year ago. Back then, she had been quiet and timid. But now, bathed in luxury, she had become someone else entirely. The character she played wore a mask, hiding her true desires. It was the perfect metaphor for the actress herself. He wondered whether his trash father truly intended to crown this woman. Would he really insult the Empress and the entire empire that way? Vyn's expression darkened. His gaze swept across the crowd, and he spotted two familiar faces. They were Miss Abby and Miss Liz, enjoying the performance. Ever since he had returned her necklace, he had not seen Abby again. Her father, the Duke, had practically locked her away. It was not only to protect her from other suitors, but specifically to guard against him. The corner of his mouth lifted. The Duke's concern was justified. After all, he did intend to use her as a pawn in his schemes. His actions would undoubtedly hurt her. He gazed at her from the box. Seeing her tonight had not been part of his plan, but he was glad that she seemed to be in good spirits. She was radiant. She truly was a mysterious and fascinating woman. A sincere, faint smile appeared on his lips. Beside him, his attendant was completely dead asleep. The snores were loud and clear. Vyn sighed. He had completely forgotten a man was even there. It seemed his family's talent for battle did not extend to artistic appreciation. Her lies were exposed, and she was cast out of society. The cruel reality was too much for her to bear. She ran, trying to escape her fate, but she had nowhere to go. Her only escape was an endless sleep. The curtain fell. Thunderous applause erupted through the hall. The audience rose to their feet, cheering for the magnificent performance. The commotion woke Vyn's attendant with a start. He looked around, completely exposed. Vyn merely glanced at him. The attendant tried to act as though nothing had happened, but Vyn only chuckled. Suddenly, Vyn saw the two girls again. Oh, it looked like they were leaving. Liz accidentally called out Abby's real name. Our girl panicked badly. Vyn walked toward them, and Abby curtsied awkwardly. He told her there was no need for such formality. Our girl was completely flustered. She had been so busy lately that she had forgotten he even existed. He mentioned that he had heard Duke Kanler was keeping a close watch on her. She shot back, "I wonder whose fault that is." That mouth of hers really held nothing back. Suddenly, Abby's protection squad appeared out of nowhere, trying to block Vyn away. But his gaze was firm. They were no match for a determined prince. As an apology, he offered to treat them to tea. Abby's eyes immediately lit up. This invitation was meant for her, right? The tea was simply delicious. Now, this was life. They sat together in a private room. Vyn asked what they thought of the opera. Our girl admitted that she had been deeply moved. The transformation scene had felt like real magic, but she found the story unsettling. Then Liz cut in, asking what Abby was talking about. Abby panicked. Liz calmly explained that most ladies came to the opera only to socialize, while Abby had truly been immersed in the performance. Abby screamed internally, "Why have you been watching me the whole time? This is so embarrassing." Vyn simply sipped his tea with great interest. He changed the subject and asked about Lady Emily. Liz confirmed that they knew she would become the new goddess of flowers. Vyn looked thoughtful. Liz asked whether he knew her well. Our girl listened intently. Vyn explained that Lady Emily was now the principal performer. But just 2 years ago, she had merely been a courtesan. Abby was shocked. How had she climbed so quickly? There were signs long ago, Vyn said darkly. 3 months earlier, the Emperor had married her off to the 89-year-old Count Laren in order to give her a proper status. Liz had heard about it, but 89? Our girl was practically speechless. After that, the Emperor and Lady Emily grew closer and closer. Vyn called his father a lecherous wretch, one who had even driven his own mother to her death. He had no particular opinion of the lady herself, but he predicted that she would meet a miserable end, just like many others. The image of a guillotine flashed through his mind. Then he suggested that they could go meet her in person. Liz said that for the sake of their jewelry business, Tiamo Jewelry, they did indeed want to meet her. Vyn's eyes lit up. He saw an opportunity. He asked whether their new shop needed another investor. His offer was as smooth as silk. The girl's ears nearly perked up. Was he serious? Of course. He said it with a dangerous and charming smile. Naturally, he had a few conditions, but for them, this was a golden opportunity. They could hardly believe their luck. Once the new flower crown design was finished, she decided to personally visit Lady Emily. But in order to keep her true identity secret, she needed a little trick. And so our girl decided to go undercover, disguising herself as Liz's humble maid. It was magical girl transformation time. She summoned a mist spirit to change her appearance. Her hair color changed in a swirl of magic. Liz was utterly stunned by the transformation. She could hardly believe how realistic the disguise was. "You look like a completely different person," she exclaimed. They arrived at a mansion that screamed nouveau riche from top to bottom, with boxes of the latest shoes piled everywhere. Lady Emily was clearly a shopping addict. A maid was helping her try on a new pair of shoes. The room was filled with sickeningly sweet pastries and decorations, so gaudy they were excessive. Precious jewels were scattered everywhere, mixed in with some surprisingly cheap imitations. How tacky. Our girl and Liz took in the chaotic scene. Emily huffily rejected the final pair of shoes. The maid nervously explained that those were already the last pair from the new season. But the lady did not care at all. "That is your problem to solve," she snapped, then kicked the shoes away like a spoiled child. Just then, a servant announced their arrival. Our heroine stepped forward with a calm expression. Emily gave a scoff, annoyed that some noble lady had insisted on seeing her, but she still allowed them to sit. Suddenly, a gift from His Majesty the Emperor himself was delivered. Emily opened the box with a sly smile on her face. "Oh my, how generous," she said softly. She picked out a fan that looked extremely luxurious. Her sharp gaze turned toward Liz. "Well then, Miss Liz Carty, what do you think?" She waved the fan, practically radiating smugness. This was not a question at all. It was a display of power. Liz realized that Emily was simply showing off the Emperor's favor. It was because she had once been mocked by other noble ladies. They had invited her to gatherings only to humiliate her, even demanding that she dance for them. And so now, she harbored deep hostility toward all noble women. For a moment, Liz looked worried, but our girl made her move, activating fashion expert mode. "A deep scarlet dress would suit you better," she said boldly. Emily was startled. The girl continued, suggesting satin shoes to match. She even offered up her own earrings. A maid placed them on a tray and presented them. Emily's interest was piqued, and she decided to try on the whole ensemble. She looked at our girl in surprise. "Why not try it?" our heroine suggested with a smile. The transformation was unbelievable. Emily looked radiant, and the dress was simply magnificent. At last, she had a style that suited high society, and Emily was utterly stunned. I thought noble ladies all looked down on me, but our girl laid the flattery on thick. If even slaves praised my designs, I would gladly dress them up. Then she declared that Emily was the only person suited to represent the Flora Festival. Liz watched in awe. Our girl was practically the true queen of flattery. Emily was completely moved and wanted to see the jewelry. Our girl explained that the shop belonged to her brother. However, she had brought the designs for the flower crown. She showed the first design, a beautiful crown set with a massive ruby. Emily thought it was nice, but a little dull, more suited to the current empress, and she made one thing very clear. I truly hate being the same as everyone else. Luckily, Liz had come prepared with a backup plan. She brought out another, more unique design. On the carriage ride home, the mood was rather contemplative. Liz asked whether our girl was thinking about Lady Emily. She looked at me before we left. Do you think she saw through my disguise? The girl's expression was very grave. She thought it over. Emily was proud and charming, an ambitious woman who wanted to spread her wings and fly. And for their business, that was a good thing. That design had been made especially for her. But a bird in a golden cage. What would happen to it once its master grew tired of it? That thought triggered a terrifying vision. Emily was dragged away, screaming for the emperor. The cold blade of the guillotine fell, along with her final scream of terror. Our girl jolted awake in bed. Her heart was pounding. It had been another horrible dream. She sat up, trembling all over, the vision of Emily's fate still haunting her. A knock at the door startled her. Who would be visiting so early? It was her brother, Patrick, dressed sharply in his uniform. She was still in her nightgown and immediately grew a little flustered. He had come to say goodbye. He had been assigned to a mission. She worried that he was overworking himself and felt a pang of guilt for not noticing his burden sooner. He suddenly gave a soft cough. She immediately rushed to his side in concern. He assured her that he was fine, but her eyes were filled with worry. She told him she wished he did not have to leave. He gently reminded her that both of them had responsibilities. After spending so much time with her family, she had forgotten what parting felt like. He patted her head comfortingly. "Don't worry, Abby. I'll be back soon." He even teased her, saying her thoughts were written all over her face. Before leaving, he gave her one final reminder. "Wear the dress and jewelry I picked out for you." He said it in full overprotective brother mode and promised he would accompany her to the Flora Festival. "Next year, I'll be back soon," he vowed. She promised she would wait for him. This time, she would protect everyone. As Patrick walked through the palace courtyard, he saw the third prince chasing a butterfly. The little boy looked happy and carefree, enjoying his childhood, and even the emperor put on the appearance of a loving father in front of him. The prince suddenly turned his head, and Patrick froze. He felt an enormous, terrifying Romana surging from that child. He was shocked to the core. How could a boy so young possess such power? Just then, the empress appeared. Patrick immediately bowed. She held a bouquet of roses in her arms, but her face was pale and weary. He tried to comfort her by bringing up the uproar over the Flora Festival, telling her that the emperor was merely acting on a whim. The little prince peeked out from behind his mother's skirt. The empress sighed and said that one could not lose what one had never possessed. Then she changed the subject and asked about his family's collapsed mind. He assured her that reconstruction was going smoothly, but she saw through him at once. "You are worried about what is hidden behind those incidents, aren't you?" He shuddered. The empress said her family would offer their full assistance, and a cold fury flashed in her eyes. "His Majesty may be able to tolerate them, but I cannot." Patrick was stunned. Why would the empress, who had never interfered in such matters, get involved? The bell rang. It was time for her to leave. As she departed with her son, only one chilling thought remained in Patrick's mind. Was she doing this for her son's future, or did she have some larger plan? The town was in an uproar. Even though it was only a simple rehearsal, a gorgeous carriage passed through the streets. The crowd gasped when they saw the person inside. Wait, that was not the empress. It was a famous opera actress. And look at the magnificent ruby crown she was wearing. People had never seen a design like it before. Meanwhile, our girl and her brother were watching from the side. This was all part of her overall plan. She would create beautiful, affordable jewelry that everyone could admire. Even our little lion cub thought it was a brilliant idea. The Empress, however, was not amused. She watched the parade from the window, her face like a mask of stone. Seeing the commoners celebrate a woman who was not her maid rage churn in her heart. She turned away from the window and ordered a carriage prepared. It was time for her to make her entrance again. Back in the square, our girl sighed, wishing her other brother were here too. Aaron immediately grew jealous. Hey, your favorite brother is right here. Our girl merely rolled her eyes at his behavior. He suddenly looked guilty and panicked, admitting that he had to go meet his business partner, that mysterious mechanical mage. The man was extremely reclusive and very difficult to track down. If Aaron missed this chance, he might not be able to see him again for a year. He panicked just thinking about the huge amount of money he was about to lose. Our girl only thought he was strange. A mage who refused to say where he was going? Aaron began begging her, practically praying to her. Please, don't tell father about this. He knew that if their father found out, he would be in huge trouble. Just imagining the punishment was too much for him. She finally gave in and waved him off. Her brother instantly grew suspicious, but before he could ask her anything, he vanished in a flash. That was way too fast. For this meeting, he was actually willing to risk angering their father. Now she felt a little sorry for him. It was time for her to do a little investigation of her own. A bustling market was the best place to look for secrets. The whole place was full of life because of the festival, lively and cheerful. Vendors sold fresh flowers, as well as snacks that looked absolutely delicious. The latest fashionable clothes were also displayed for everyone to admire. Our girl looked around, taking everything in. She remembered the magic market she had visited last time. That place had been mysterious, with everyone wearing cloaks and speaking in code. The items for sale had been strange and dangerous, and most of what she bought had been for self-defense. Suddenly, a glimmer of light caught the corner of her eye. Something shiny was hidden behind several boxes. It was an extremely intricate mechanical box, but the price was an absolute nightmare, almost 1 million gold coins. Our girl was shocked. No wonder this stall had no customers, but she still could not help being curious. She asked the mysterious hooded vendor how it worked. He gave a charming smile and told her to press the button on the side. She pressed the button, and a beautiful flower made of countless tiny petals bloomed open. It was simply breathtaking. The vendor called it the breath of life. He said he'd spent 3 years carefully crafting it, every single petal included. He demonstrated its magic. When the goddess opened her eyes, the flower would bloom. When she closed her eyes, the flower would close as well. Our girl was completely captivated by its beauty, but the price was still a problem. If you like it, you may take it, the vendor said calmly. He actually wanted to give it to her for free. Our girl was dumbfounded. There was no way she could accept such an expensive gift. She insisted on paying, saying she would pay as much as she could. It was not much, but it was all the gold coins she had on her. She held out the small purse. The vendor merely laughed, amused by her stubbornness. In the end, he agreed to accept her gold coins. If we meet again, he said, I can grant one request you make of me. He looked at her meaningfully, then left. What a strange encounter. She had not even seen his face, but she had caught a glimpse of his hair. It was a rare and beautiful silver, as if it glowed beneath the sunlight. Meanwhile, in another mansion, another story was unfolding. A young woman named Peggy was woken by the maids. It was time to dress and prepare for a very important day. She sat in silence, letting them bustle around her, her face utterly expressionless. One maid brought over a bowl of water, but the bowl had a small chip in it. The head maid noticed at once, and her expression turned ugly. She ordered the maid who had made the mistake to be driven out of the mansion. Everything had to be perfect today. Peggy asked whether His Highness had arrived. The maids confirmed that his carriage was already outside. The head maid told her to seize this opportunity. Tonight, she had to win Lord Vyn over. A maid held up a dress. It was a beautiful gown, but Peggy's gaze fell on another one. She pointed at a different dress, one that looked suspiciously similar to a dress our girl had once worn. She did not even know whether she liked Lord Vyn, but her father's orders were absolute, and she had no choice in the matter. At the banquet, Lord Vyn looked bored to death. He had been guilted into staying so that people would not think he favored the Kanler family. He had reluctantly agreed. Peggy watched him from across the room. She knew she had to approach him, but there were too many people around. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, urging her to take the initiative. She waited until he was finally alone. She followed him into the garden and nervously approached him, asking if he was taking a walk. He turned around, his crimson eyes seeming to pierce straight through her. Those were the eyes of a killer. She trembled with fear, her palms turning cold and damp. She tried to calm herself down, but he had already noticed her fear. "You are afraid of me," he stated. "Then why insist on meeting me?" She froze completely. He asked whether she feared his sword or him as a person. She stammered, trying to confess her feelings, but was interrupted by his cruel rejection. "We are not suited for each other," he said coldly. He told her to let go of things that had never belonged to her in the first place. Her world collapsed. After she returned to the mansion, her father flew into a rage. "You useless thing," he roared, saying she had ruined a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As punishment, he ordered her to be dressed in coarse linen and thrown into the servants' quarters. Poor Peggy had disappointed her father once again. The maids chatted idly as they brought her moldy bread. In their eyes, she was now even lower than a servant. For 5 days, she was left in the cold and starved. She cried and begged her father to let her out. Then there was a knock at the door. It was the head maid. She held a piece of cake that looked delicious and slid it into the room, but when Peggy reached for it, the maid stopped her. "You cannot eat it. Those are the Duke's orders." Then the maid rubbed salt into her wounds. She spoke of how Duke Kanler was gaining more and more favor, and how his daughter and Lord Vyn had been seen together. She reminded Peggy that everything she had came from her father. Peggy felt trapped. She was afraid of Lord Vyn, afraid of that killer-like aura of his. She knew Abigail Kanler was absolutely not like that. But the maid called her weak and pathetic, telling Peggy to stop trembling and start thinking like a true member of the Lynch family. "If you continue like this," the maid warned, "you will never leave the servants' quarters." Those words left Peggy completely stunned. The maid left, telling her to think carefully. Peggy felt that her life was nothing but a lie. On one side was luxury, and on the other was the cold floor of a servant's room. She was nothing more than a puppet, forced to please someone she feared for the sake of her family's glory. All she felt now was cold and hunger, and all she wished was to return to her room. Rats scurried through the dark, forgotten tunnels. At the top of the stairs, poor Lena hesitated. Her aunt called to her from the darkness. The woman's smile radiated a serious stranger danger warning. She promised Lena a key that could change her life, but below them was a very suspicious-looking magic circle. This was not the self-help seminar she had imagined. Lena nervously pointed out that she could not even use magic. Her aunt merely smiled smugly and told her not to worry. Yes, of course, nothing to worry about. Then she grabbed a bucket full of ominous contents and splashed that foul-smelling liquid all over the magic circle. The girl gradually realized in horror that it was blood, pure and undiluted blood. Her aunt had completely lost her mind, telling her that if she wanted revenge, she should stop acting like a child. She promised that everyone who had ever hurt Lena would eventually pay for their sins. And so, darkness began invading Lena's heart. That was right. Everyone who defied her, every last one of them, had to pay. Villain origin story loading. She finally asked what she needed to do. Her aunt told her to simply pour out all her anger and despair. She would handle the rest. This was definitely not some demonic contract. As more blood was poured down, Lena allowed her hatred to flow out. Her first target was the beautiful Flora Festival. Meanwhile, at that festival, our girl Abby and her friend Liz were standing at the peak of life. Literally, because they were in a hot air balloon. Liz revealed her genius marketing plan. They were going to advertise the new flower shop from the sky. During the festival, there was a tradition of scattering flower petals. So they would scatter petals printed with the shop's logo. Ruthless. It had cost a fortune, but that was the power of money, baby. They were ready to make it rain petals. The greatest petal airdrop in history was about to begin. Like goddesses of flowers, they began scattering petals, each one beautifully printed with a golden logo. The petals drifted down over the city walls, and the crowd below was completely captivated. Even Prince Karl and his patrol noticed the beautiful sight. His lieutenant complained about having to be on duty during the festival. Then a guard noticed the distinctive golden logo. People immediately recognized that famous flower shop. Karl caught a petal, his expression impossible to read. He recognized the intricate design of the everlasting flower, and he knew who had made it. A thoughtful, faint smile appeared at the corner of his lips. He ordered his men to continue patrolling, hoping today would pass peacefully. "Oh, you naive child." The The scene was perfect and peaceful. The festival procession arrived at the church, and this year's goddess of flowers carriage made its magnificent entrance. She was helped down from the luxurious carriage, looking every bit like a true goddess. As she entered the church, she began singing a beautiful hymn. Her voice echoed through the grand hall, and the ritual to bless the land began. Even the emperor and empress were present, watching the children's choir. The song was all about the goddess of flowers, spreading happiness. Abby and Liz watched from the crowd, slightly worried. They were concerned that their flower design was too similar to the empress's. I noticed that goddess is staring right at her. The goddess of flowers stood proudly, as if she were the sun in human form. But the empress merely returned a cold smile, completely unmoved. The emperor announced the start of the ritual. A priest began the ceremony, explaining that all life originated from flowers. He proclaimed the blessings that the goddess had bestowed upon the world, then handed her the ritual lily bud and asked her to recite the ceremonial words. She began to chant. Abby could feel powerful magic surging inside the flower, but nothing happened. The flower stubbornly remained closed. The priest was utterly confused. The crowd began whispering. The flowers were supposed to bloom all at the same moment. He asked her to try again. The goddess began to sweat, her eyes widening with extreme fear. Because on the other side of the city, Lena was also chanting her own curse, a spell of death and flames. The goddess could only scream in denial. Suddenly, chaos erupted. Unclean black flames burst out from the body of the goddess of flowers. This was Lena's hatred made manifest, a curse she had unleashed upon all those she despised. Her fury condensed into dark chains, and at the heart of her curse was one person, Abigail Kanler. The priest panicked as he watched the goddess of flowers being swallowed by the flames. Abby and Liz were both terrified, and then someone screamed. Every flower in the church, all of them burst into flames. The guards hurried forward in a panic to protect the imperial family. Karl's could hardly believe his eyes. The entire church was beginning to collapse. Huge chunks of stone crashed down from the ceiling, and panic and destruction filled the place that had once been sacred. Liz realized their exit had been completely blocked by rubble. She turned to Abby, but her girl was gone. Abby stood frozen in place, staring fixedly at the flames, her eyes filled with a familiar terror, because she had seen flames exactly like these before. Traumatic memories surged over her like a tide. Her home had been burned to ash. That fire could not be put out at all. Her father tried to rush back in the house to save her mother, Asha, but he was held back with all their strength as he screamed his wife's name. Young Abby could only cling tightly to him, begging him not to go, too frightened even to speak properly. She knew it was no ordinary fire. It was the inextinguishable flame of sin. Her mother stood calmly amid the blaze, understanding what she had to do. Her father ordered his men to take Abby somewhere safe. Little Abby was dragged away, crying out for her mother. Her mother's final words were a plea for Abby to protect everyone. She smiled through her tears, already prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice, because she knew that only life itself could extinguish an eternal fire. Abby remembered once asking her teacher about flames like those. Her teacher confirmed that such terrifying magic truly existed. She explained that fighting it required an unimaginably great price. The memory of her teacher's gentle hand offered little comfort, either then or now. Back in the present, the church had become a nightmare of smoke and screams. Abby trembled all over and collapsed against Liz. Liz caught her friend and asked if she was all right. Coughing, Liz pointed out that Abby had just been standing there completely motionless. Abby apologized and admitted she had been trapped in her memories. She voiced her deepest fear. She was afraid the past would repeat itself, and that fear had frozen her in place. Liz shouted that the fire had already spread over them, right above their heads. The survivors were trapped, and their prayers were useless against the magical flames. A little girl cried out for her mother, and something inside Abby snapped. She clenched her fists. Determination replaced fear, and a new realization ignited in her heart as she walked toward the wall of fire. Liz screamed her name, begging her to come back. Abby remembered her teacher's lesson. If you cannot stop the source, then transform the energy. She stepped into the flames. In her heart, she thought that she had always been the one who needed saving. But not this time. The same thing would not happen again. A light of power flared in her eyes. She began to chant a sacred hymn, but this time, what answered her was her own magic. Brilliant green light burst from within her, and the energy of the flames began transforming into the energy of life. The survivors could only stare blankly as beings of light formed from magic appeared around her. The young girl raised her hand and took control of the chaos. She prayed to the goddess of life and commanded the flames to become a sea of flowers. After a blinding flash, the fire vanished, replaced by beautiful pink roses. Miles away, a red gemstone inside a box flashed with light. Abby's brother sensed it, and a terrible feeling swept over him. Back in the tunnel, Lena violently coughed up blood. Her aunt was stunned. The ritual had failed. The backlash struck Lena with devastating force. Back in a now deathly silent church, the survivors looked around at the miracle. Liz found Abby lying unconscious in a bed of roses. She had done it. Our poor heroine had completely exhausted her strength. She softly called for her mother and finally let sleep swallow her. Our girl trembled, standing on the edge of a magical abyss. A voice called her name. Abby. She was wearing a stunning blue gown, surrounded by ethereal flowers. A glowing butterfly gently landed on her collarbone. It seemed to be leading her somewhere, fluttering around a statue. She called out to the strange creature, "Where are you going?" As she asked, she stepped forward. Her eyes widened, filled with both fear and curiosity. The butterfly led her to a cluster of roses glowing blue. Suddenly, visions of her previous life flashed before her eyes. A ghostly figure rose into the sky. Was this her past? She remembered the fire that had taken her mother's life, and the terrible blaze that had ended the entire world. She remembered fighting with all her strength and swearing to stop it. And then she remembered the fire that ultimately took her own life. Her final prayer had been that she might bloom again. People say your life flashes before your eyes before you die, and our poor heroine seemed to have finally reached her limit. It looked as though she had used up the last of her strength. Pain swept through her entire body, and she could no longer hold on. Reincarnation magic was far more dangerous than she had imagined. She wondered whether she had managed to save everyone this time. "I'm sorry, Vyn," she thought. "I can't be of any help anymore." With countless regrets, her consciousness began to fade. Back in the real world, the atmosphere was heavy. The butler reminded the Duke that the tea was hot, but the Duke merely took a numb sip, as if cut off from the world. He felt nothing. He asked about Abby's condition. The news was not good. She showed no signs of recovering. Worse still, the first prince had arrived. Vyn looked resolute and asked to see Abby. But the Duke erupted with an enraged no. He told the prince to leave, even though he had acted very bravely during the fire. Vyn was completely stunned by that reaction. "Your Grace, why?" he asked, his voice full of confusion. The Duke refused to yield at all. He would not let Vyn near Abby again. He announced that he would send her away from the capital. For her safety, anywhere would do, as long as it was not here. He said he could bear the threats himself, but he would never allow his daughter to be put in danger again. The prince looked at him and understood the Duke's pain. The Duke confessed that he still dreamed of his late wife all the time. He could not allow Abby to be dragged into the center of a power struggle. Empathy appeared in Vyn's eyes. He understood. He lowered his head and apologized sincerely. But regarding the fire, he had brought an explosive piece of news. It had not been ordinary arson. The culprit was the same person who had killed the Duchess years ago. The Duke was utterly shocked. "What?" he gasped, as though the whole world had spun around him. Suddenly, a maid rushed in, screaming for them to come. "The young lady," she cried, calling out Lord Vyn's name. Vyn immediately rushed to Abby's bedroom. He stood over her unconscious form, his face full of worry. His thoughts flashed back to another terrible fire. That day, the Grand Cathedral had been set ablaze, and panicked citizens screamed that children were trapped inside. He ordered his men to wait and charged in alone. What a hero! This man truly was built differently. His knights could only watch in terror as he disappeared into the flames. He plunged headlong into that chaos of magical fire. The smoke was thick and nearly suffocating. The magical flames had no effect on him, but the smoke was deadly enough. He drew his sword and swung it with force, clearing the air around him. That was when he saw her. It was Abby, surrounded by a soft green glow. She was using her own life force to save the people trapped inside. Her face twisted in pain as she released her power. The flames were turning into flowers. Vyn was shaken by her incredible power. Just as she collapsed from exhaustion, he caught her. "Abby, wake up," he pleaded as he held her tightly. He reassured her worried maid and told her to entrust Abby to him. The children he had saved cried his name, filled with gratitude. That was the last time he saw her conscious. He carried our girl out of the smoking, flower-covered ruins. She had given everything to save the innocent. Now, back in the present, he desperately begged her to wake up. "Please wake up," he whispered, his voice full of suppressed emotion. 2 weeks had passed since that day. The Duke stayed by her bedside, tormented again and again by memories of his late wife. He remembered happier times, when his family had still been whole. A perfect day in a garden, filled with laughter. But every dream had to end eventually, and when he woke, he faced only an empty room, with nothing but himself and the cold moonlight. He looked at his daughter and asked whether his wife's spirit had come to take Abby away. He gently stroked her hair. His heart ached terribly. "If only you had come to take me instead," he pleaded into the empty room. Meanwhile, the servants in the mansion were all whispering among themselves. A mysterious mage had arrived, and even the prince was here. The mage explained that the ice around Abby was a magical crystal. All the mana inside her body had been completely drained. That crystal was the only thing keeping her stable. The little prince was devastated by her condition and cried his heart out. Then the mage gave the cruelest diagnosis. He said she would die, and that they should begin preparing her funeral. Vyn flew into a rage and demanded that he come up with another way. The mage said it would be difficult, but there was indeed one extremely dangerous option. They could inject a large amount of mana directly into her body. Vyn's eyes widened. The little prince volunteered, thinking he could do it, but the mage stopped him, knowing the child's power was not enough. His gaze fell on Vyn, sensing an astonishing force. Vyn released his aura, and it was terrifying beyond words. Dark and powerful mana surged around him. The mage was shocked. This power exceeded what any ordinary human could endure. He immediately asked to speak with the Duke. He explained the dangerous plan. Vyn would pour his own mana into Abby, but it could be fatal for both of them. Of course, the Duke hesitated, unwilling to gamble with his daughter's life. But Vyn had made up his mind. He deeply admired Abby's courage. "Please trust me," he said firmly. "I will bring her back." After a long, tense silence, the Duke made his decision. He took Vyn's hand and entrusted all his hope to him. The mage said he would assist with the ritual. Vyn placed both hands over Abby's and prepared to begin. He poured his mana into her, diving deep into her subconscious and calling for her in the endless darkness. "Where are you?" he called, searching for her lost soul. He floated in the void of her mind, determined to find her no matter what. Then he saw it. "A familiar balcony vinis a stari sky." He saw her. "I found you," he thought, relieved. He reached out and gently took her hand. It was her, Abigail Kanler. She was shocked. "Vyn, how are you here?" she thought. He must have died too, because this was the rift between worlds. He quickly reassured her that he was still alive. But the flames from her trauma appeared again, burning all around them. She panicked and screamed that her time had come and that he had to leave. She warned him that if the flames swallowed him, he would die too. She tried to break free, but he held on her tightly and refused to let go. He remained silent, gathering his immense power. Back in the real world, everyone else watched with bated breath. The Duke was so tense he was on the verge of breaking down, but the prince told him they had to believe in them. Vyn finally spoke. "So this is what you've been facing all this time." Abby shouted in panic that this was not the time for small talk. Suddenly, he pulled her into a tight embrace. He told her that just as she had never given up on others, he would not give up on her. "Please trust me, Abby," he whispered. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest. He promised that he would bring her back. The flames around them roared, growing even larger. He held her tightly and told her not to worry. His eyes burned with unshakable determination. "Hold on tight," he said. She nodded, trusting him completely. He held her securely in his arms. But then thorny dark vines burst out of the fire, trying to drag them down. They wrapped around them both and pulled them back toward the abyss. Vyn summoned a powerful magical shield to block the attack. In response, Abby's own light magic produced vines that pushed the darkness away. A path of light opened before them. The necklace on her chest shone brightly. The mage checked Vyn's condition. He had returned to his own body. He collapsed and began coughing, but he had succeeded. Abby's fingers moved, making a faint sound. She was awake. Our girl was back. The mage assured them that she was no longer in danger. The little prince introduced the mysterious mage. His name was Normanstrand, and my goodness, he was truly handsome. He modestly called himself nothing more than an ordinary mage from the magic tower. But the little prince immediately called him a liar and blurted out the inside story, throwing the scene into chaos. The girl found herself in a strange, watery dream. She wondered in confusion who else could be there with her. Suddenly, a mysterious woman wearing a black veil appeared. The woman's voice was like a terrifying, hoarse whisper. She spoke in riddles, saying she was trapped in an eternal sleep. The figure was dark and dreadful. She was a true phantom of the night. Our heroine could not see her face clearly, but she remembered a horrifying sight, bleeding scars. This was not a dream. It was nothing short of a nightmare. Suddenly, voices pierced the darkness, calling her name. It was her family, and her father was smiling at her. Abby, they all called. Our girl's lashes trembled open. She was awake. Her entire family was gathered around her bed. "Father, everyone," she whispered, finally returning to reality. Her father was crying uncontrollably and swore he would never leave her side again. Her younger brother hugged her tightly, crying so hard his tears would not stop. The butler practically had to drag these boys away. He told them she needed rest, not to be strangled by love. Her father finally forced himself to calm down, looking utterly exhausted. He chased everyone out so our poor girl could have a moment of peace. And so, Abby was placed under strict bed rest, and the entire mansion went into full panic mode over her health. They even tried to feed her one spoonful at a time, like a baby. Her younger brother went completely overboard, forbidding her from going outside and actually clinging tightly to her leg without letting go. But you cannot keep our girl locked up forever. She finally escaped from this loving prison. She knew they were only being overprotective, but a girl needed some fresh air. She understood that she had been unconscious for several days, and they had all been worried sick. As she walked through town, she heard people whispering. They praised her as the hero who had saved the children from the fire. Our girl felt a little embarrassed by all the attention. Just then, a familiar voice called her name. "Speak of the devil." It was the crown prince himself. Goodness, he looked handsome. He asked how she was already able to be out and about. For a moment, our girl was so dazzled by his excessive handsomeness that she lost focus. She pretended it was nothing and said she had only come out for some fresh air. She asked what he was doing here. He was overseeing the reconstruction of the ruined church. He looked at the rubble with a sorrowful expression. He told her that the flowers she had summoned would also be removed. The clergy considered them an ill omen. Abby could not hide her disappointment. He immediately noticed her sad expression. "Why do you look so upset?" he asked, his voice full of concern. He told her it had not been worth it. She had nearly exhausted all her mana and almost died. This man was worried to death, but Abby merely smiled it off. She told him to look at the lively, happy town. Things that were truly meaningful could not be erased so easily. He looked at her, completely captivated, but she could tell he was still carrying a heavy burden. Honestly, this man needed to relax a little. In her heart, she complained that he had probably died from too much stress in his previous life. Harsh but fair. Suddenly, the wind rose, and she felt a wave of weakness. She leaned toward him and suddenly began coughing violently. He looked down at her and immediately became alert. When she raised her head, she felt dizzy, and without saying a word, he took her hand. Our girl was completely caught off guard. He told her to hold on while he transferred his own mana to her. He was so serious and focused that it made her heart flutter uncontrollably. He suddenly remembered that this was how he had awakened her before. "Trust me," he said, and her heart felt as if it might burst. Her face turned fiercely red. "Good heavens!" She screamed inwardly at her wildly tangled heart, ordering it to calm down at once. He explained that since her magic had been exhausted, his magic could now safely replenish hers. If he had transferred it before this, it would have been too painful. She felt his warm magic flow into her body. It really worked. He was basically a handsome walking power bank. She immediately felt much better. She thanked him and pulled her hand back. He smoothly took the opportunity to change the subject. "How is Miss Emily?" he asked, his expression darkening. He explained that Emily's face had been disfigured in the fire, and worse, she had been identified as the demon who had started the cursed flames. The emperor himself had already issued an imperial edict. Emily would be executed. The verdict had been passed. The sentence was death. Abby was horrified, but Emily was not a mage. The crown prince agreed as well. He suspected it was a curse and part of a larger conspiracy. Abby knew he was right. The enemy had already begun to move, and now the fact that Abby could use magic was public knowledge. Her father wanted her to hide in the countryside, or go to the magic tower. That would mean leaving with Norman the mage. "Is there no other option?" she asked, unwilling to run away. She could not leave her father to face all this alone. The Crown Prince gave a wicked smile. He had known she would say that. He said that if she could not hide in the shadows, then she had to stand in the light. The only thing that could protect her now was the title of Crown Princess. "Get engaged to me," he proposed. His tone was impossibly smooth. Her instinctive aura response was, "Sure, no problem, let's do it." The Crown Prince was completely stunned. This was not the reaction he had expected at all. She asked if he was worried about something. "Oh, right." He explained that an engagement was different from their previous fake relationship. They would have to act like real lovers. "Oh, so you're worried about my acting?" She teased. She instantly got into character, leaned close to him, and called him "my dear Tilda." The poor boy blushed, stammered, and completely lost his composure. She flirted him into utter confusion. Later, after returning to her room, she finally realized what she had just done. She buried her face in her pillow and screamed, dying of embarrassment at herself. Why had she done that? But she knew she had to stay and find the culprit. And she also had to admit that the Crown Prince's physique really was quite impressive. Just then, her door was shoved open with a bang. It was her brother, Patrick. He rushed in, looking panicked, and pulled her into another bone-crushing hug. Seriously, why did her family always try to strangle her with love? But then she saw it. His arm was bleeding. She quickly healed the wound. She asked what had happened, and he told her. They had been ambushed by people from the Lynch family. They had captured the leader, but the man refused to talk. A light flashed in Abby's eyes. Couldn't they interrogate him with magic? The so-called magic turned out to be a tiny, violent fairy beating the man unconscious. Our girl was not buying it at all. Wasn't that just physical torture? Patrick explained that her magic was too weak, and her mother's necklace was useless now. Their only option was to bribe the gold-loving fairies and have them do the dirty work. Just then, another fairy arrived with a discovery. It was a fairy memory bubble found near the church. It could trace magic back to the caster. But as the image inside gradually took shape, Abby froze in shock. Her brother looked at the bubble, then at her. Meanwhile, at the Lynch family mansion, a Miss Carlity was refused entry. She had already been turned away 3 times, and she had finally had enough. She charged straight past the servants and headed right for the room. The maids tried to stop her, but she kicked the door open herself. "Peggy, you owe me an explanation," she shouted, only to freeze on the spot. Peggy was covered from head to toe in glowing curse runes. Everyone screamed in terror. How could this be? Peggy looked at her own body and screamed in fear. She slammed the door shut and collapsed to the floor in despair. Only then did the people outside realize that Peggy's servant was gone as well. Peggy saw a newspaper on the floor announcing that Emily would be executed for arson. A horrifying truth surfaced in her mind. Was it me? Did I really cause all of this? Her brother's voice pulled her back to reality, asking what she had seen in the memory bubble. He could tell something was very wrong. Our girl forced herself to stay calm and said she had only zoned out. But inside, she was already panicking because she realized she had almost said everything out loud. She knew Peggy was involved, but she also wondered, could an ordinary person really use such dark magic? Could Peggy truly have done all of this alone? Meanwhile, Peggy had completely broken down and was crying in the dim room. Suddenly, a voice called her name. The door creaked open, and Peggy flinched in fright. A mysterious woman walked in and asked Peggy why she was hiding from her. Peggy completely lost control, screaming at her to get out. But the voice calmly said, "Peggy, it's me." It was her best friend, Lorraine, who immediately stepped forward and gave her a comforting hug. She gently pulled away Peggy's hands, which were covering her face. "I'll always be by your side," she said in an overly sweet voice. But Peggy was ashamed of the curse marks and tried to hide them. Lorraine would not let her hide, saying she had already seen them. She asked Peggy what she needed to make everything better. With tears in her eyes, Peggy begged in despair, "Take me somewhere no one can find me." A sinister smile slowly appeared on Lorraine's face. "Of course," she said. She took Peggy to a luxurious private estate, promising that Peggy would be safe there. A complete lie. Peggy accepted gratefully, without the slightest suspicion. She took a bite of cake and finally felt a moment of peace. So sweet, just like her friend betrayal. The maids bustled around them, and emotion welled up in Peggy's heart. She believed Lorraine was the only person in the world who cared about her. Lorraine simply smiled and said this was what best friends were supposed to do. She told Peggy to rest, acting like the perfect confidant. When Peggy tried to speak, Lorraine gently hushed her. Tell me when you're ready, she coaxed softly. When absolute snake. The moment she was alone, that sweet mask shattered. A soft laugh slipped from her lips, then turned into completely unrestrained laughter. She threw her head back and laughed like a true villainess. My fate really has changed, she screamed. She looked down at her hands, now clean and flawless. The curse had been transferred, and poor Peggy had become the scapegoat. It turned out that in her previous life, Lorraine had only been a puppet. She had been used by that bastard Karl, and she would never let the same thing happen again. She found it hilariously funny that she had become friends with the idiot who was now taking the blame for her. Taking all of this on for me is exactly what you're meant to do, she thought. Ruthless. Now she could finally stand beside her true love. She believed her love for Vyn transcended time itself. But there was still one problem. An annoying woman who had served Karl in their previous life. The great mage Kanler. Anger surged through Lorraine as she remembered how Kanler had stolen all the attention at the festival. The commoners were still talking about her incredible magic even now. An evil idea took shape in Lorraine's mind. She would manipulate Abby into finding the murderer, Peggy, so justice could be served. And poor, naive Peggy was merely a pawn in this twisted game of revenge. The scene returns to our girl Abby, who is deep in thought. When she was reborn, her goal had been simple: reform the cursed Emperor Karl. And if that failed, simply get rid of him completely. But simply replacing him was no longer an option, because this time, Karl also had memories of his previous life. He mocked her, asking if she truly thought she could control fate. He pointed out that, in truth, nothing had really changed. Abby stared at the broken statue of her family's ancestor, the great mage Kanler. One moment, a servant had been wiping it down. The next, it had cracked and shattered into countless pieces. It was a terrible omen. It reminded her of what had happened when her family's mind was destroyed. She had never seen her family so worried. That was when she realized how selfish she had been in the past. That was also why she had agreed to work with Vyn. He had helped her family, and they had become his bargaining chip against the Emperor. But now everything was different. First, there was Vyn. The cold executioner from her previous life had now become a calm, self-possessed man. And honestly, he was ridiculously powerful too. And there was that great fire. Her head throbbed in waves as she tried to piece together her fragmented memories. Her brother Patrick's voice interrupted her thoughts. He gave her exactly the hug she needed and asked whether the culprit had confessed. Abby confirmed that the fairies had forced out the truth. The mastermind behind the mine collapse was Duke Lynch. But when he asked about the arsonist, she hesitated. The vision had shown Peggy, but Abby could not be certain yet. She had to confirm it with Karl first. Abby's voice carried a cold fury. Brother, that fire was the same fire that killed our mother. If we can find the cause, we can find the murderer. She wanted revenge, and no one could stop her. Patrick held her hand, his expression grim. I won't stop you. Then he added with a chilling intensity, no matter who it is, I'll kill them with my own hands. Late that night, a hooded figure lurked outside the temple. The person was covered in curse marks and began chanting a dark spell. The ground split open, and blazing flames erupted from the person's hands. The entire temple was swallowed by fire. A guard spotted the person and shouted. The arsonist fled in panic, dropping something on the ground. The guard rushed over and picked it up. It was the unmistakable crest of the Lynch family. The trap had been sprung. The church caught fire again, and the entire city descended into chaos. The emperor publicly and viciously reprimanded the crown prince, blaming him for the disaster. He demanded that the culprit be found immediately. The emperor was furious, his face turning a terrifying shade of red. He gave the crown prince an ultimatum: find the arsonist or give up his right to inherit the throne. The poor crown prince could only kneel and accept this nearly impossible task. But just then, a subordinate arrived with a lead. They had found a witness to the fire. A terrified man was brought forward, swearing that he had not done it. He claimed he saw a woman in a black robe chanting a spell before the church caught fire. He did not see her face, but her hands were covered in strange patterns. And when she fled, she dropped something. It was a family crest, specifically the Lynch family crest. His lieutenant reported that Miss Lynch had not appeared in public for some time. A dangerous red light flashed in the crown prince's eyes as he pieced the clues together one by one. Then his lieutenant mischievously asked whether he was thinking about Miss Abby. It seemed our boy had reached the point where he had to face his partner. The scene shifts to a picturesque autumn date. Our girl Abby is there, trying hard to coach the awkward crown prince. She reminded him that they had to act like a couple because everyone was watching, and she was right. The rumors were already flying everywhere. He apologized to her for his father's public outburst, but she simply handed him some fruit. He knew this little date would only make the Emperor angrier, but he had something to give her. He leaned in very close, and our girl's heart began to pound. He gently took her hand, and to her great surprise, he placed the Lynch family crest in her palm. He told her it had been found at the scene and implicated the Lynch family. But Abby revealed a shocking twist. She had asked the fairies to collect the magic at the scene, and it did indeed belong to Peggy. The Crown Prince said he needed to tell her something important about his dreams. It turned out there was another person having the exact same dreams. That person was deeply connected to Peggy, but just as he was about to say who it was, someone suddenly yanked the ground beneath their feet. It was the Crown Prince's younger brother, Karl, and he looked completely insane. He was trying to forcefully pull them apart, screaming at them to let go. Our girl stared at him in shock at how unhinged he was. The Crown Prince merely gave a wicked smile, thinking that this chaos was also part of the dating experience. Abby and Karl began yelling at each other. The Crown Prince only sighed and said fate had brought them together. He felt as though he were trying to manage two feral cats. After the chaos calmed down, everyone began introducing themselves. Abby suddenly became elegant and composed, lifting her tea for a refined sip. The Crown Prince asked his younger brother why he had come to ruin their date. Karl said he had heard his brother was meeting the girl he liked, so of course he had to come see who it was. The Crown Prince was surprised that they knew each other, and then Abby dropped a bombshell. Karl was the one who shared dreams with her. Karl completely exploded, angrily blaming her for telling his brother about it. The Crown Prince calmly explained that they were in a cooperative romantic relationship. Abby tried to get information out of Karl, but he was difficult. He did not want to talk in front of his brother. But the Crown Prince only glanced at him, and Karl instantly turned into an eager little puppy, ready to spill all the gossip. He proudly declared that in his dreams, he became the emperor and then destroyed the entire world. The Crown Prince's face simply said, "Huh?" Then he asked whether Karl knew Peggy. Karl cheerfully chattered that Peggy had been his wife in their previous life. Our girl was speechless. This guy's level of chaos had reached an entirely new dimension. Abby asked the million-dollar question, why destroy the world? Karl fell silent and said they should talk about that later. The Crown Prince watched thoughtfully from the side. So Abby changed the subject and asked about the church fire in his previous life. Karl said his memories were a mess. He remembered a fire, but in that timeline, Abby had saved everyone except the Empress. It was said that the Empress could use magic too. She knelt for 3 days and brought down a miracle, extinguishing the flames. But he had never found out who the culprit was, which meant the culprit might not necessarily be Peggy. Karl then began getting jealous of their closeness again, but the Crown Prince merely told him to get used to it. Just as Karl was about to throw another tantrum, another guest arrived. It was Lorraine, and our girl immediately sensed a strange atmosphere. She noticed the way Lorraine looked at the Crown Prince. She tried to shake off the feeling and greeted her friend. Lorraine joined their chaotic picnic. She held Abby's hands with a worried expression and said everyone believed Peggy had started the fire. She begged Abby to prove Peggy's innocence. Abby felt confused. How had the rumor spread? Lorraine explained that the family crest had been found at the scene. Worse still, Peggy's own father had already condemned her. Lorraine insisted that they go to Peggy's house together. The Crown Prince said he would go too, but Abby reminded him that his presence would only make things worse. Lorraine looked displeased, but she still grabbed Abby's arm and led her away. They arrived at the Grand Lynch family mansion. The butler greeted them and confirmed that Peggy was in her room. He led them through the long corridor and opened the door to Peggy's room. The girls froze in shock. The person inside was a completely unfamiliar girl. The butler called her Lottie. Just then, Duke Lynch appeared. He smugly introduced the girl, saying she was Lottie, the true young lady of this family. When Abby asked about Peggy, he sneered and called her a criminal, saying he had already cut ties with her. Abby was shocked, but the Duke was merciless. Her reputation was already ruined, so she was no longer his daughter. He claimed he had evidence to accuse her. Suddenly, a chilling scream tore through the mansion. Everyone looked toward the end of the corridor, where a terrified maid was pointing at something. There was a bloodstain on the floor. Our girl noticed that it led to a secret passage. She forced herself to stay calm. "We have to investigate." She grabbed a torch, and everyone carefully walked into the darkness. They descended the stone steps, only to see a horrifying sight at the bottom. A woman lay dead in a pool of blood, and the word punishment was scrawled on the wall. Lorraine trembled, wondering whether Peggy had done this. But the Duke began shouting like a madman. It was that witch. We have to find her. We have to burn her to death. The furious mob had already found its target, and they were hungry for blood. Inside the house, Peggy trembled in terror. She had been found. Lorraine had assured her this place was safe, but it had all been a lie. A voice called her name with false concern. It was Lorraine, standing outside with the mob, still pretending to be her friend. She told Peggy to stop struggling, saying everyone already knew what she had done. Our Abby could only watch in horror as the chaos unfolded. The crowd screamed for punishment, whipped into a frenzy, and one man was practically beside himself with rage. Another noble tried to calm him down, but it was useless. He shouted that Peggy was the sinner who had burned down the church, then threw a burning torch straight at the mansion. The entire building instantly exploded into a massive sea of flames. The two young ladies were horrified, but before anyone could react, a powerful force swept through the crowd. It was Crown Prince Vyn, and he had had enough of this absurd farce. He seized the arsonist by the throat, his eyes shining with fury. He ordered the guards to control the crowd, but the mob had already gone completely out of control, crazily shouting for more fire. Our heroine realized something was very wrong. This was not a spontaneous riot. This had been planned by someone. She turned to Vyn, her eyes pleading, asking to borrow his power, and insisting that Peggy could not be allowed to die without a proper investigation. He did not hesitate for even a second. Fine. He took her hand, and her sacred power flowed out through his fingertips. Together, they began casting a massive purification spell. Their powers combined, summoning a cleansing rain. The magical downpour began extinguishing the raging flames. But someone was not happy about that. Abby Kanler. It was Lorraine, her face filled with undisguised fury. She watched the scene and cursed our heroine as an eyesore. She was always getting in her way. Thanks to their quick reaction, the fire was completely put out. Vyn steadied Abby, but she pushed him away and said they had to find Peggy. Just then, a guard shouted that they had found something. The Crown Prince and our heroine turned to look. It was a grim discovery among the ashes. Later, in the throne room, the nobles demanded justice. A duke told the emperor that Peggy had gotten what she deserved. He wished he could have torn her to pieces with his own hands. Yikes. But the emperor's aide was smooth. He pointed out just how suspicious that sounded. He even implied that the duke had set the fire to destroy evidence. The duke completely lost his composure. He stammered in protest. The emperor merely smiled and said, "I believe in your loyalty, Lynch. However, you know what happens after however." He was about to strike hard. He demanded that the duke hand over all his military authority. Ultimate checkmate. Then he turned his attention to Miss Karate. Lorraine put on her saddest expression, perfectly playing the betrayed friend and winning the emperor's pity. He rewarded her with many gifts for finding the criminal. She could barely suppress her smug smile, but then the emperor's gaze fell on Abby. His tone turned cold. He was going to punish our heroine. Abby stood her ground, ready to accept the sentence. The emperor accused her of helping a criminal who had burned down the church and killed the people. She nervously glanced to the side, her heart pounding, but just as judgment was about to fall, Vyn stepped in front of her. He blocked the emperor's path like a silent guardian. Vyn spoke directly to the emperor, his voice carrying authority. He reminded everyone that Miss Kanler had saved lives and protected the emperor's honor. The aide tried to argue, but Vyn told him to be silent. Only His Majesty had the right to judge. He pointed out that the ones truly usurping imperial authority were the rioters who had tried to execute someone with fire. Lorraine sneered and said his logic was too far-fetched. But the silver-haired knight told her she had no right to interrupt. "You got shut down, girl." Lorraine was instantly left speechless. Vyn continued his epic defense, recalling how Abby had turned flames into flowers, yet had never been rewarded. Then he asked, what reward would be appropriate for such a great achievement? He smiled faintly. A deed like this truly cannot be measured in money. Our heroine was completely shocked, unable to understand how things had developed to this point. He turned to her. "I admire Miss Kanler." The entire court held its breath. Then he dropped the biggest bombshell. Please allow me to marry Miss Kanler. Absolute chaos. What a legend. He asked again, his voice firm and unwavering. The Emperor was clearly not at all interested in this public proposal. Our heroine knew this was not over. The final decision was in his hands. But wait, another player entered the battlefield. Duke Kanler requested an audience, and the grand doors of the throne room slowly opened. It was Abby's father and brother. They had come to support her. Her brother greeted the Emperor with a formal bow. He formally requested a marriage alliance between the Kanler family and the imperial family, and he had even brought a small engagement gift, a huge, flawless, magical crystal. Everyone in court gasped when they saw it. The Emperor was stunned. Its quality surpassed anything he had ever seen. But her brother was not finished. He offered the entire crystal mine to the imperial family. He bowed deeply and asked the Emperor to grant his request. Later, Abby questioned her father. How could you give away the mine? She was completely confused. Weren't you against my relationship with the crown prince? He simply took a sip of tea. As an enlightened parent, I have thought it through. Our heroine's mind flashed back to his actual reaction. He had been screaming. Absolutely not. He had even called Vyn an evil demon who stole my daughter. The contrast was honestly hilarious. Her father calmly explained that staying by the crown prince's side was the safest place for her. He looked at her lovingly and told her that mines and crystals were just things. Compared to her, they meant nothing. Our poor heroine was so moved she nearly cried. Father. She sat there, overwhelmed by her family's support. When she looked out the window, she saw a familiar figure. It was Vyn, patiently standing in the garden. She wondered if she had missed a letter, but he did not look like he had just arrived. The maid confirmed that he had been waiting for a long time. He looked up and their eyes met. She hurried downstairs to see him. He simply asked her to take a walk with him. They strolled through the garden, and he was unusually quiet. Our heroine did not understand why he was not saying anything. She guessed he must have been feeling terrible because of what happened to Peggy, so she tried to think of a way to comfort him. But that was harder than she imagined. He finally spoke and asked her a shocking question. If you had nothing to do with that matter, then do you know what kind of person she used to be? In her previous life, Abby froze. How did he know about the previous life? He told her that Peggy had once been the trophy empress, loved only for her beauty. In that life, she and her lover, the Emperor, had lived happily and carefree. Yet in this life, she had met such a miserable end. A terrible thought flashed through Abby's mind. Had her reincarnation caused all of this? Guilt nearly crushed her. All she had ever wanted was to protect her family. Then saw the pain on her face. He gently placed a hand on her back. He had never seen her so heartbroken, and he did not know how to help her. He decided he should distract her, so he used magic to wipe away her tears. Let's talk about the engagement banquet. Just like that, she instantly returned to normal. He was stunned by how quickly she recovered. She immediately switched into business mode, planning the sacred day and the engagement rings, already thinking about outfits, and even getting her fashion-forward brother involved. Her smile became bright again as she talked about the guest list, saying all the great families had to attend. She took a deep breath, trying to focus on the happy future ahead. Then looked at her, then suggested that they should prepare lots of flowers. Her eyes lit up at the idea, and she said a sea of flowers would bring joy to everyone. She turned to him with a dazzling smile, only to find him busy doing something with his hands. What are you doing? He lifted up his creation. He had made her a beautiful flower crown, then gently placed it on her head. He joked that these sword-wielding hands of his were still useful for something. He looked at her tenderly. I don't know how to comfort you, but you will not face this alone. His gaze softened as he looked at the woman he loved. And my fiancée, our villainess, was enjoying a peaceful moment, softly humming to herself. But that tranquility was broken when a maid called out to her. The poor girl tripped and sent the entire tea set flying. She was so ashamed she wanted to disappear into the ground. The expensive porcelain shattered across the floor, but our heroine did not get angry. She was worried that the maid was bleeding. With a gentle smile, she told her not to worry about the plates. The maid was so relieved she nearly cried. But do not be fooled by her kindness. In her second life, she knew there was no point arguing with maids. She was not some cheap villainess like Peggy. She had given Peggy a more fitting ending. Our heroine's methods were far more subtle. Then an invitation arrived. The engagement banquet of Vyn Stewart and Abby Kanler. Abby, the woman who had gotten in her way in both of her lives. In the previous life, she had been a great mage. In this life, she was engaged to Vyn and destined to become crown princess. Our heroine's jealousy burned brighter than candlelight. She felt this was far too unfair. As the invitation burned, she imagined Abby's destruction. She whispered that only she truly loved Lord Vyn. Even after he died in her previous life, she had remembered him and visited his grave. This obsession was real, and she would never forget. Just then, a servant announced that there was a visitor. That person had summoned her. An evil smile spread across her face. So it had finally come. She followed the servant down a long and familiar corridor. She remembered this corridor. She remembered it from her previous life. Determination flickered in her eyes. The grand doors opened. Inside were Her Majesty the Empress and the third prince. Our heroine greeted them. The young prince was asleep, looking as weak and sickly as ever. The Empress's voice was cold. "You came." She sneered and said that someone praised by the Emperor was naturally hard to invite. She sarcastically pointed out how late she had arrived. Our heroine was shocked by the accusation, but the Empress was merciless. She wondered whether our heroine's actions had been too cruel. A bloody incident flashed through her mind. She called the victims lowly, and she praised our heroine for doing well. After blowing up a mansion, she would rather trust a valuable executioner than useless trash. Suddenly, the young prince screamed in terror. The Empress immediately panicked and tried to soothe her child. Our heroine calmly stepped forward, activated a magic circle, and placed her hand on his head. Just like that, the boy fell into a deep sleep again. The Empress coughed and regained her composure. "Let us return to the matter at hand," she said. The alliance between the Kanler family and the crown prince was a threat, and her own son was in poor condition. Without him, her position and her family would vanish into nothing. She turned to our heroine and made an extremely serious request. "You know the source of his power," she said. She wanted her to cast the Blood Covenant curse on Vyn. In return, she would give her anything she wanted. The Empress repeated her offer. She could have whatever she wanted. "What is your answer?" she pressed. Our heroine thought to herself that this was the second time she had heard this proposal. She respectfully asked for some time to consider it. The Empress gave her a deadline. 3 days. Our heroine knew this was a trap. If she agreed, she would probably die silently and without a trace. She considered her next move, the weight of the decision pressing down on her shoulders. The Empress had once been nothing more than a lowly stepdaughter, but now she trampled on others however she pleased. Meanwhile, in a distant forest, a battle had just ended. Vyn stood beside the slain monster, still looking cold and handsome. He ordered his subordinates to stay alert, while he would personally handle the leader. One knight hesitated, but one death glare from Vyn instantly shut him up. The knights knew very well that it was best not to question him. Vyn angrily slammed his fist into a tree, then lowered himself to rest. But he was not alone. A voice said he looked pathetic. It was our heroine sitting on a branch above him. She said the Empress's curse must be painful, and offered to heal him. She floated down gracefully, but he immediately stepped back. "You again," he said through gritted teeth. She asked why he was avoiding her like this. Was it because of the strange, magical markings on her body? Those markings were something she had obtained, so she could get closer to him. He did not answer. He only told her he did not need treatment, then turned to leave. He warned her never to appear before him again. She was left standing there alone, wondering why it always ended like this. When her hands were the only ones that could pull him back from hell, would he still reject her? Back at the Imperial Palace, the Empress called out to her. She knew she had been following Vyn for 2 days. "What feelings do you have for him?" she asked with a sly smile. She warned that the curse would cause tremendous harm. Our heroine merely smiled coldly. "Harm? So what? It will only kill him, that is all." The Empress asked for her answer again, but our heroine said she did not need 3 days. She began an exaggerated performance, pretending that she could not bear to watch the young prince suffer and could not allow Vyn to cast a shadow over her family. The Empress did not buy it. "My investigation says your feelings for him are rather special," she said. Our heroine dropped the act and revealed a chilling smile. She knew what fate he would face, but that was a sacrifice that had to be made for the karate family. Then she named her price. Once everything was over, the Empress had to allow her to marry him. "As long as I can be with him openly and properly, that is enough," she said with a twisted smile. The Empress gave a cold smile and agreed to grant her wish. Our heroine could barely suppress her wicked delight. She mocked the Empress's shock. You do not have memories of your previous life, so it is only natural that you do not understand my intentions. She smugly said her plan was simple. If Vyn suffered an attack during the engagement ceremony, Abby would be blamed and driven out as a sinner. And once the magic was cast, the young prince's life would also be in her hands. She had completely backed the Empress into a corner. She believed Vyn's suffering was sacrifice for their future, a future where they could be together. Back in the library, Vyn was listening to the latest report on the search for the missing Prince Karl. He was angry that the Emperor seemed completely unconcerned, and he was worried about his friend. His expression was full of anger and concern. Suddenly, he groaned in pain and clutched the brooch on his chest as dark energy surged inside him. The curse had begun. His aide panicked, and Vyn collapsed. In the silence of the Crown Prince's bedroom, someone was watching over him. It was Crown Prince Vyn, still unconscious from magical power overload. He had been asleep for quite a while, but then his eyes slowly opened. When he woke, he saw our heroine smiling down at him. She said softly, "Hey, you're awake." Our sweet heroine had been staying by his side the whole time. Still dazed, he asked why she was here, trying to sit up in a haze. She explained that she had simply walked in and announced that she was his fiancée, and his servants had been very happy to let her in. They had even suggested that she move in directly. Seriously, these attendants shipped them harder than anyone. She placed her hand over his and began healing him. May gently flowing magic soothe you. A warm light enveloped their hands. He breathed in relief, feeling the heavy burden on his shoulders lift. He asked whether absorbing so much magic would hurt her. Vyn admitted there was still a little pain, but he was getting used to it. Our heroine simply gave him a reassuring smile. She told him he could not keep sleeping forever. There was a mountain of duties waiting for him. In goodness, it really was a mountain. She finally asked the important question, why had he suddenly collapsed? He held her hand, preparing to finally tell her the truth. He began to explain that, in his previous life, he had activated a resurrection magic circle, a magic circle that was originally meant to bring her back to life. His expression turned serious. He asked her, "You do not seem surprised by your death in your previous life." She playfully offered to diagnose him by touching his muscles. "Girl, I get you." He did not find it funny at all. He explained that he was immune to magic, but it came at a terrible price. Anyone who touched him would feel immense pain. It was a power he could barely control. For a long time, he had thought he was cursed. In a flashback, a royal advisor told the emperor that the prince was possessed by a demon, pointing at him accusingly. He demanded that they drive the evil spirit out of the prince's body at once, and young Vyn was subjected to a cruel purification ritual. He collapsed from the unbearable pain, but the guards coldly ordered him to stand up, leaving him to struggle back to his feet all alone. He gritted his teeth and forced himself up. He told her that, at first, absorbing spells had hurt so badly he could barely endure it. But as time passed, he learned to absorb every spell released at him. Yet that was not what his worthless father wanted. With a cruel smile, the emperor declared that the evil spirit was still inside him. So he threw his own son into a forest filled with magical beasts, forcing young Vyn to face a terrifying monster alone. But someone saved him. It was Lady Kanler, a powerful mage who stood between him and the beast to protect him. Our girl was stunned. "Lady Kanler? You mean my mother?" He confirmed it. Yes, it had been her mother. In a flashback, her mother explained his unique condition. She comforted the terrified little boy, saying that his body was indeed a little troublesome. Little Vyn cried that he did not want to hurt anyone. Her mother handed him a piece of cloth and told him that if he wore gloves, he would be able to touch other people. And that was the moment he began wearing gloves. Back in the present, Abby realized he wore gloves because of her mother's kindness, and she gave him the softest, most sincere smile. He reminded her that her own power was growing, and that her body might not be able to withstand it. Hearing his words, she looked up with some concern. Then he looked at her and said, "Thank you, Abby." The way he said her name was simply different, and the poor girl's heart felt as if it had been hit by a truck. A critical hit. Her system was completely overwhelmed by emotion. She utterly panicked and said she had to go. After saying that, she really just ran away. The scene was total chaos, and she quickly got in her carriage and left. As she left, she thought about her plan. If she could stabilize his magic, perhaps he could avoid his fate of dying young. Her goal was simple: live to a ripe old age, drive away the emperor, and then put Karl on the throne. If Vyn heard all that, he would definitely be confused. But one thought kept lingering in her mind. Was a disorder in his magic truly the real cause of his death? She felt as if she was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. Just then, she saw a familiar figure in the garden. It was the handsome, silver-haired mage. He gave her a charming smile. She was surprised to see him here, but he told her it was not a coincidence. He had come to find her. He was glad to see that her health had recovered, but he sensed that something strange had mixed into her magic. There was something he wanted to ask her for. He asked her to bring a specific ruby necklace to the magic tower. He could not explain why, but he promised that she would gain something from it. Then he mentioned the hairpin he had given her. His promise was still valid. If she ever needed his help, she only had to place it in a vase. She thought she had already used up that one request, so she smiled in relief. He explained that the previous request had been paid for by her brother's empty wallet. The two of them laughed together for poor Aaron. Then he looked at her gently and told her that this new promise belonged to her alone. "Do not forget it," he said with a smile. Later, another bouquet of flowers arrived from Crown Prince Vyn. The maids whispered among themselves, wondering if this was so-called true love, while the girl held the flowers and sank into thought. She did not think it was love, at least not yet, but she admitted that the line between business partners and sincere affection was growing blurrier and blurrier. They spent more and more time together, and they would greet each other on the street. One day, Crown Prince Vyn approached her while she was out for a walk. He had only come to say hello. Her friend pointed out that the prince's face was completely red. He was shy. They even went to the theater together. The theater owner was a total romance enthusiast and insisted that they share a private box, while Vyn, surprisingly, adapted to the situation quite smoothly. While they were out, one of the flowers on her dress withered. She looked at it sadly, and Vyn noticed. He told her he could create a new one. She was surprised and told him there was no need. But he insisted and manifested a beautiful new flower with magic, then offered it to her with a proud smile. Then he asked if she wanted to try taking off his gloves. He slowly removed his own glove. But when his bare hand approached the magical flower, it instantly withered into dust. His power was simply too strong. Oops. He said he had acted without thinking, but he was not discouraged. He realized that he could now control his absorption ability better than before. He looked at her and said that no matter how many she wanted, he could make as many as she liked. The moment was sweet and gentle. She thought that he was unexpectedly easy to get along with, and she hoped moments like this could last forever. But she knew the truth. They were only partners, means to achieve a goal. They still had far too many things to deal with, and she knew that if Vyn ever met the person he truly loved, she would have to step aside. Meanwhile, back at her mansion, her family had completely entered panic mode. Her brothers were even afraid to touch her engagement dress. A maid explained that no one dared disturb her. Her father was even more dramatic, suggesting that everyone pack up and run away together. The girl had to calm everyone down and remind them that they were a team. She asked them to help her arrange her engagement veil, and only then did everyone pull themselves together again. Soon, she stood before them in a stunning gown and asked what they thought. But elsewhere, in a dark and lonely room, another woman was plotting. A voice came from the mirror, mockingly asking if she had gone soft. A sinister figure appeared in the reflection. The woman sneered and said she was excited. She could not wait to see a pathetic woman fall from the clouds. She said all of it would only require paying a small price. This woman was obsessed with Vyn, claiming that her love had spanned countless lives and that she had bound him with a cursed, unbreakable contract. A burning pain suddenly shot through her arm, and glowing runes surfaced. The cursed contract was eating away at her body. She clutched her arm and wished that someone named Peggy were still here to help her. The pain was unbearably intense, but her resolve was set. With a chilling expression, she declared that this was the price she had to pay. The clock tower rang, announcing the start of the ceremony. The guests whispered among themselves, amazed that this wedding was actually happening. After all, they were talking about the cursed crown Prince Vyn. And then she arrived. Our girl Abby looked as beautiful as a true goddess. The day had finally come. She and the prince stood side by side before the altar like a flawless pair of lovers. He gently took her hand, called her name in a low voice, and gave her a smile capable of melting glaciers. Our girl was slightly shaken by his sincerity, but her thoughts drifted away, and she felt as though everything were a dream. She almost thought she would wake up in a magic tower, then pulled her back to reality and asked if she was all right. He told her that she had been spacing out for quite a while. The priest began to conduct the ceremony. through this engagement, the two families would be united. It was an alliance, not romance. As the ceremony continued, they looked exactly like a royal couple. Abby thought that this should have been a happy memory. But was it really? Even so, she admitted that these emotions were real. She looked toward her father, her brothers, and the loyal servants in the crowd. She even saw her friends smiling at her. She felt so lucky, but she still had one regret. She wished her mother could have been here to see her. The thought brought a wave of sorrow. Why had she only been reborn after her mother had already passed away? How she wished she could see her mother one more time. A memory flooded into her mind. It was from when she had been a little girl, searching for her mother. She would knock on a large wardrobe while playing hide and seek. "Mother, are you inside?" She remembered her mother's gentle voice and warm embrace. Back in the present, she wondered why she was remembering this now. Suddenly, Vyn let out a sharp cough, and our girl turned to him in concern. He said he was fine, but he clearly was not. After the ceremony ended, they greeted the cheering crowd. The people were delighted to see their prince and his new bride. Abby thanked him for everything he had done to protect her all this time. She gave him a warm and sincere smile. But then a dangerous red light flashed through his eyes. Then he coughed violently and collapsed. The crowd screamed, and chaos erupted. The Emperor was horrified. Abby tried to catch him as he fell, and a dark, evil energy surged out of his body. Afterward, the newspapers completely exploded. Crown Prince Vyn had fallen into a coma, while Abby was thrown into prison. They fabricated outrageous stories, calling her a spy and an arsonist. Her brothers read the slanderous articles in disbelief, and Aaron erupted in fury. What kind of nonsense is this? A servant told them that the mansion had already been surrounded, and that their father had also been summoned to the imperial palace. Aaron demanded to know how his brother could still be so calm. Alan said he was not calm at all. He also wanted to storm into the imperial palace, but he could not. Abby was their hostage, and something was very wrong. Meanwhile, our poor heroine was chained inside a cold, dark cell. She knew this was no ordinary prison. She recalled the moment everything had gone wrong. The Emperor had not hesitated for even a second. He immediately ordered her arrest. She could have escaped with magic, but she did not. If she ran, her family would be ruined. Besides, she could not simply abandon Vyn like that. She realized she had walked straight into a carefully arranged trap. Inside the cell, she had completely lost her strength. She tried to summon her magic, but it was only a tiny spark, and it went out instantly. The magic in the air was too thin to cast any spell. Just as she was about to lose hope, she touched her hair. The hairpin. They had not taken it away. She remembered the person who had given it to her. It was her secret signal for when she was in trouble. But just as a plan was beginning to take shape, she heard footsteps. Someone was coming. She quickly hid the hairpin. A figure appeared outside the cell. It was her rival, Lorraine. Abby demanded to know what she was doing here. Lorraine merely gave her a disgustingly sweet smile. "I came," she said softly, "because I wanted to see you humiliated." The malice in her eyes was terrifyingly intense. Our girl could hardly believe it. "Are you joking?" But Lorraine's smile only deepened. "In 5 days, we will never see each other again, so why keep pretending? Because in 5 days, she sneered, you will be sent to the guillotine." Lorraine had always known that something was wrong with our girl. She had simply never guessed the full truth. Abby's life magic, the kind that could make flowers bloom, was almost unheard of. She recalled a memory. Back then, she had encouraged Abby to use her ability and set a small trap. She knew our girl's magic would instead make the flowers wither. Then there was the Peggy incident. Abby had not even tried to defend her so-called best friend. Instead, after Peggy fell, Abby had stomped on her again. Absolutely ruthless. And now Lorraine had come to deliver the final blow. With a chilling smile, she told Abby that she had only 5 days left before her execution. The poor girl was completely shocked. The charges were read out: arson, aiding a criminal, and murdering the prince as a witch. Lorraine mocked her, asking if those were enough to kill her. She told Abby that she could run away, but her family's lives were all hanging by a thread. The Emperor wanted their family's magical crystal mine, and this was how he would get it. If she obediently accepted her fate, her family would be spared. Abby demanded to know why she was telling her all this. The reason was simple and vile. Lorraine wanted the crown prince for herself. Abby's eyes widened in horror. What on earth had this lunatic done? What exactly did you do? She asked, trembling. Lorraine pretended to be innocent, claiming she could not use magic. But she revealed that she had been watching Abby for a very, very long time. She was the cloaked figure lurking in the shadows. Our girl had sensed her magic back then, but Lorraine had lied and said it was only her guard. A nameless nobody hiding in the dark. She was only telling the truth now, because Abby was going to die soon. She showed her most horrifying smile and continued pouring salt into the wound, promising that she would take very good care of Vyn. He will not even remember that you ever existed, she whispered. The rage in Abby's eyes almost erupted like a volcano. But she was trapped. We flash back to Vyn's perspective. He remembered seeing something strange, a fleeting pattern of black magic beneath Lorraine's wrist. The scene shifts again to the Empress and her dying son. She coughed, her own life force also fading. She sent away the worried maids. She had been pouring her own magic into her son's body. It was keeping him alive, but the price was unbearably heavy. All she could do was watch him sleep. She stroked his head and whispered her final wish. No matter what happens, you must survive. Back in the cell, Abby finally figured everything out. Those markings were black magic, which meant Lorraine had been lying all along. A terrifying thought entered her mind. Could Lorraine also be a reincarnator? Abby sighed. The situation looked completely hopeless. But our girl was a fighter. During the confrontation, just now, she had secretly borrowed some of Lorraine's magic. She condensed it into a glowing butterfly, a beacon of hope. It fluttered past the unsuspecting Lorraine. The tiny messenger flew out of the dark prison. It carried her desperate plea for help through the night sky and across the entire city. At last, it landed in front of someone's door. A hand gently caught the butterfly. It was the mysterious mage Norman. He understood the message. It seemed it was time to fulfill his promise. We return to the past. Lorraine presented the Empress with a cursed orb. The Empress sneered, completely unaware that she was being used. Meanwhile, the Emperor was being manipulated by his new mistress, Teresa. He suddenly found the Empress unbearably irritating. The man looked at his own wife with pure disgust. He could no longer stand seeing her, because he already had a new little darling. The Empress tried to ask if he was all right, but he cruelly cut her off. He stormed away, not even bothering to hide his contempt. He decided to go see their son, Anselton. The Empress followed behind him, calling for her child in a heartbreaking voice. But when she approached, she saw a terrifying black aura coiling around her son's bed. She let out a piercing scream, and the Emperor rushed in, shocked. He supported his wife as she collapsed in terror. She cried out, "How could this happen?" She realized the unimaginable truth. He was not breathing. Just then, someone arrived. It was Lorraine, and her timing could not have been worse. The Empress had summoned her earlier, and now she had come to gloat. She curtsied and pretended to be polite. She offered false condolences, then immediately blamed the prince's death on Abby. The Empress broke down and angrily shouted, "Shut up." She was filled with a mother's fury, but Lorraine acted like a victim, behaving as though she had done nothing wrong. Then she struck where it hurt, listing all of the Empress's secret crimes, including the murder of Abby's mother. The Empress tried to attack with magic, but her magic had disappeared. Lorraine revealed the ultimate betrayal. She had reversed the curse. All of the Empress's magic had been absorbed by Vyn. The Empress was utterly powerless and broken. Lorraine mocked her. Did she really want to marry a prince who was unconscious? No, Lorraine said with a sneer. He will wake up. Back at the Kanler mansion, a maid rushed in with terrible news. She held up a newspaper with a devastating headline. Princess Abigail kills the third prince. Her brother was so furious his vision went red. I cannot take this anymore. He was already prepared to commit treason to save his sister. His older brother tried to stop him, telling him it would be a suicide mission, but he could not stop. He was going to take his private army with him. But just then, a calm voice cut through the chaos. It was the mage Norman, with Abby's butterfly resting on his shoulder. Abby's voice echoed from the butterfly, pleading with them for help. Her brothers were stunned. It really was her. Norman got straight to the point. He had come at Abby's request. He needed to borrow their mother's ruby necklace. It was the only thing that could save everyone. We see a memory of their beautiful mother, Asha. The necklace she wore contained tremendous power. Norman urged them to hurry. There was no time left to hesitate. He asked about Crown Prince Vyn, and Vyn was right there with a fresh battle wound on his face. Vyn merely said it was a minor accident. He immediately got to the point, promising that he could prove Abby's innocence. He only needed 3 more days, along with the Duke's full support. The plan was simple: surround the execution ground with troops. He was serious about clearing our girl's name. The Duke noticed that Vyn had the bearing of a future emperor. 2 powerful men were joining forces for the same goal. The Duke asked Vyn why he still doubted their rebirth. Vyn fired back, calling him an indecisive time regression mage. The Duke took out the mysterious heart-shaped necklace. He admitted that he was suspicious by nature, but this necklace had changed everything. He explained that it contained forbidden magic, a resurrection magic circle. But it was a flawed spell, one that could grant only 1 year of life. And the price was enormous. Vyn listened to him with an expression that said he was completely unconvinced. The Duke insisted that ancient magic could not turn back time. The only unknown factors were Abby and this necklace. He suspected she had engraved some powerful, invisible magic onto it. Vyn quietly absorbed this explosive new theory. He asked the Duke what he intended to do. The Duke's expression darkened. He said this was not a matter for him to act on. It was a matter for the Empress. Vyn was completely confused. The Duke revealed that the resurrection magic circle came from the former Empress's notes. In the previous timeline, she had used his own elder brother as the core of the spell. His brother's powerful energy sustained her child's life, but it lasted only a short time. That was because he was sent to the battlefield to die, turning it into a convenient tragedy. Ever since then, the Duke had been investigating the cause of his brother's death. He remembered the Empress trying the spell again, and how he had stopped her when he was still a child. That poor child had been terrified. Vyn was shocked. "Are you saying Abby has seen this magic circle?" The Duke clarified that he had only shown her part of it. She had thought the sacrifice was a beast, not a person. He remembered that Lorraine, the Empress's maid, had once helped him ascend the throne. That memory was both a blessing and a curse. He clenched his fists in anger. He had only remembered all of this after the fire. Vyn changed the subject and asked about the Duke's brother. The Duke admitted that something was wrong. He looked worried. A huge amount of magic was flowing into his brother's body, but it was not destroying him. Instead, it was being slowly absorbed. They agreed to split up for the time being. Vyn also had his own matters to handle. With a mysterious smile, he pulled up his hood. "And where was our chaotic prince going?" "To a cake shop of all places." He bought the most delicious-looking cupcake, then entered a private room. The door clicked shut behind him. He was meeting someone in secret. The room was delicately and compactly decorated. He placed a perfect raspberry cupcake on the table, and his secret guest was none other than Peggy. He told her to try it. She asked how he knew what she liked. He became very smooth. "Perhaps I care about you more than you think." She did not buy that flirtatious line at all. "I won't eat it," she declared, "not until I get my revenge." She was so fiery and stubborn, but Vyn simply looked at her, completely unmoved. In fact, he found it amusing. She demanded to know what was so funny. He told her that she was exactly the same as in her previous life, ambitious, beautiful, and absolutely unwilling to give up. His words left her stunned. He recalled saving her from the mansion fire. He did not understand why either, but he had to get her out. He remembered carrying her through the deadly flames. She was so weak that she coughed in his arms and could barely speak. He told her to save her strength, but she whispered that she wanted to live. In that moment, he knew he could not let her die. Time jumps ahead to the day of the execution. The guillotine loomed high, promising a tragic end. Our poor Abby was forced to kneel, her hands bound, and pushed down. She cried out in despair. The crowd whispered as they watched the famous Duke's daughter about to be executed. Of course, the wicked Lorraine was there too, fanning herself with a triumphant smile. Abby knew her enemy was enjoying this moment. But the chains truly trapping her here were not magical shackles. They were her family, watching helplessly. She knew she could escape, but they would pay the price for it. They were all trapped. She lamented that she had been given a second life, yet felt she had failed to protect them. Lorraine gave a sickeningly sweet farewell. "Goodbye, Abby." She waited for the Emperor to arrive and seal the verdict. But why had they not come yet? Lorraine began to grow irritated. This was not part of her perfect plan. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the crowd. "Why are you killing her? She saved us." Lorraine was furious. How dared these lowly commoners interfere? But the voices in the crowd grew louder. "She saved us." That was right. During the fire, they could not believe that the person who had saved them was now being punished. How could this happen? Soon, the entire crowd began shouting, "Free Abby Kanler! Free our savior!" Lorraine completely lost control. Did they not know the Emperor's judgment? A new voice cut in, calm as ice. A debt of life cannot be erased by lies. It was the Duke. He looked like a god descended to earth to judge all living beings. He looked straight at Lorraine. "Am I right, our dear reborn lady?" Lorraine froze completely and stammered that she did not understand. Just then, the sound of hooves shook the stone-paved square. It was Abby's father, arriving with knights. "No one is allowed to harm my daughter." Reinforcements had arrived. Her brothers were with him too, ready to fight. Our girl was utterly shocked. "Father," She asked why he was defying the Emperor. He pulled her into his arms. You are more important than anything. He swore he would not fail again, as he had failed to protect her mother. He would stand against anyone who slandered his daughter. Abby trembled, overwhelmed with emotion. Her father announced to the entire imperial capital that his daughter was innocent, and that the true culprit had been hiding in the shadows all along. He said someone here must be very shocked, because Peggy stepped out from the crowd with Vyn at her side. And I'm still alive. She admitted that she had committed arson and murder, but she pointed directly at her accomplice. Lorraine Karate. I thought you were my friend. Lorraine was forced into a corner. Peggy slapped her hard across the face. That was for you, she said coldly. Lorraine screamed, How dare you? But a hand wrapped in black magic seized her wrist. It was Vyn. I never gave you permission to strike my empress, he said, his eyes glowing. Then he dropped a bombshell. In this world, you're not the only one who was reborn. Only pure terror remained on Lorraine's face. It was all over. Abby thanked her new allies for their courage. Peggy held her hand and reassured her, I'm not only helping you. I'm helping myself, too. Then she turned to the crowd. There is someone else with blood on her hands. She tore open Lorraine's sleeve. Black magic runes carved into her arm were exposed. The crowd gasped in horror. It was black magic. Peggy demanded an explanation, but Lorraine was speechless. The wicked woman trembled all over. Her perfect plan had completely collapsed into chaos. In her previous life, her body had been a prison for black magic. Disgusting marks covered her skin. People had called her a monster, a deformity, a blood-stained aberration. They found her repulsive, living in the light themselves while leaving her to suffer in the dark. She had merely been a pawn in the hands of the former Empress and Vyn. A desperate question echoed in her mind. Why couldn't she change any of this? Her despair turned into pure rage. Why couldn't they all just die? But even in this life, accusations still came pouring in, slander and condemnation. They pointed at her, calling her a sinner, an evil witch. The endless denunciations were suffocating. She could not bear it anymore. Why had nothing changed? She turned to run, but a man pointed at her. She's trying to escape. Suddenly, a dark figure appeared, her eyes flashing with menace. It was the Empress. She looked down at the chaos she had created. Enough. She spoke with utter contempt. Save your words. Our girl was shocked, facing the monster who had destroyed her life. The Empress declared that everything she longed for was meaningless. Then a terrifying memory flooded into view. A child collapsed limply. It was the day the third prince was born. A man screamed in agony, while Vyn and another woman watched in utter shock. The Empress had just cut off the previous emperor's head. Your one and only emperor has truly returned, she announced to the terrified crowd. The next day, she whispered, turning her attention to our heroes. She gathered hatred and resentment in her palm. All of Mephisto's power was concentrated in her blood. A terrifying magic circle began forming on the ground. Our girl simply could not believe it. You shouldn't have any magic left, she screamed. But the Empress merely looked at her smugly. As long as my child returns to my body, my magic will return. She looked so confident, so wicked. My child listens to his mother. He will not resist. Don't even think about it, our girl shouted, releasing her own power. She blocked with all her strength, but her body was already exhausted, and her magic was fading. The Empress easily summoned a massive wave of dark energy. First, I must get rid of you, she said coldly. You are the unstable variable. The curse slammed into our heroine. It was pain she should never have been able to withstand. She collapsed, using her body to block the black flames. Abby, Vyn shouted helplessly, unable to intervene. The gap in power was far too vast. Someone pointed in horror. Look at Abby's hand. It's turning black. It was being consumed by black magic. This was erosion caused by the curse. But just then, a new figure appeared, his gaze sharp. Power of purification, dispel, he chanted, releasing a sacred magic circle. Take this, he said, handing her a necklace. It can help slow the erosion. When she touched the beautiful red jewel, time itself seemed to stop. The necklace burst with dazzling light. Her mind went blank, and only shattered images remained before her eyes. They played out in slow motion. Everyone lay on the ground, groaning in pain. The Empress grabbed the dying Lorraine with one hand. Then a huge black sphere formed around them. The sphere expanded, swallowing everyone into the darkness. Vyn was trapped. Damn it, I can't move. He saw his father standing there firmly. Father, brothers, run. But his father only smiled sadly. I was fortunate to be your father. Then he was swallowed by the darkness. A girl screamed, feeling her power surge out of control. Blood dripped from her mouth. Violent energy was tearing her apart. She needed more power, any power that could stop this nightmare. But she had already reached her limit and coughed up blood. The pain was unbearable. The Empress merely watched with interest. "Give up," she sneered. After peering into our girl's memories, she said, "This magic circle is different. I'm 100 times stronger than that imposter." Her eyes flashed with terrifying light. "So sleep. Become part of my child. You will have a new mother." The illusion of a happy family shattered into 1,000 pieces. A girl was lost, falling into an endless void of darkness. She landed in a strange place, a world made of water and shadows. Here again, she realized she was inside the magic circle, in the rift between life and death. If she fell in, everything would be over. But then she heard something. It was a memory. This was the Empress's subconscious. We see the Empress's past. A cloaked man told her that black magic was born from hatred and blood. She agreed without hesitation. Later, the maid saw her trying to use magic on a sleeping child. "What are you doing?" a woman shouted. "Seize her! Seize her!" Then another memory surfaced, a flame that could not be extinguished. It belonged to our heroine's mother's mother. The voice asked, "Do you remember? Your mother absorbed the flames into her own body. To protect you, she became a living sacrifice. But no one could stop those flames. She was devoured by the fire she had tried to control." The Empress's voice echoed again. "Of course, I paid a price as well. In an instant, I became an old woman. She had merely been a pawn in the hands of the man who taught her black magic. He originally chose another girl from the karate family, but I used her as fertilizer for black magic," the Empress confessed. "That restored her youth and allowed her to seduce the Emperor. After she gained power, her teacher also became her nourishment." A cold, cruel smile spread across her face. Our girl trembled with rage. "I knew it. It was all you." The Empress's figure appeared before her, a shadow of despair. "I do not hate your mother, nor that girl, nor even the Emperor. I only hate fate. She tried to tempt our girl. Are we not the same? You struggled through 2 lives, and nothing changed. You must be tired now, too. Return to your mother's warm embrace. There is no need to struggle anymore." Dark tendrils reached toward her, become the final ingredient for the magic circle. Suddenly, a hand reached through the darkness. "Abby!" In an instant, he grabbed her hand, his eyes burning with fierce light. He desperately shouted her name. She felt a jolt as he held on tightly, then looked utterly terrified for her. He refused to let go. Our girl froze, her heart pounding. A terrible realization surfaced in her mind. She had seen the scene before. This was the moment from her prophecy, the moment he died. Dark thorns burst from the ground, trying to tear them apart. A voice shouted a warning that the Empress had caught up. Vyn groaned as the dark energy overwhelmed him. He realized that here, he could not absorb her magic. This was the Empress's domain. Abby understood. For him, this was a battle he could not win. In this space, the Empress's power was absolute. He drew close to her, his voice a desperate whisper. "Give me your magic," he told her. It was the only way as long as their skin touched. But he warned her that her body would not be able to endure it. It would be torn apart by that pure power. Our girl did not even blink. It did not matter. She could endure it. Why? Because in her previous life, she was not merely some noble lady. She was a true powerhouse, a great archmage. Magic surged through her body like a thunderstorm, and with it came Vyn's memories flooding into her mind. She saw him finally waking with Norman's help. She saw Norman, that loyal friend, and she saw Vyn's desperation as he rushed into the magic circle. She felt his worry, his trust in her. But then she saw something else, a small, sorrowful boy. The third prince made a heartbreaking wish. He revealed that his mother, the Empress, dreamed of a miracle, but a miracle built on the suffering of others. It was not happiness. He begged someone to save his mother and end this nightmare. The Empress's face was cold and merciless. The prince knew that his mother was trapped inside this cursed magic circle. The goddess watched, heartbroken. He explained that this magic circle had been designed to fail from the very beginning. It forced his mother to relive her tragic past again and again. That endless cycle of pain fueled the curse. The magical backlash struck Abby like a heavy blow. Vyn shouted her name, thinking he was about to lose her. But But our girl only smiled through the pain. She knew what she had to do. She began chanting powerfully, and her entire body started radiating sacred light. Turn this sea of fire into a sea of flowers. She called upon the goddess of life herself, and dazzling green light burst forth. It purified everything. When the light faded, she told Vyn to look around. They had returned. They had truly returned. But this victory felt so hollow. The area affected by the magic circle was vast. Everyone had vanished, and the once prosperous city had now become a ghost town. This was not the ending our girl had wanted. Suddenly, she collapsed, coughing violently. The magic had placed an enormous burden on her body. Vyn rushed to her side, his face pale with fear, but she still had one final trump card hidden away. The necklace Norman had given to her mother contained a time reversal spell, and on top of that, her mother's soul was protecting her. She would not die. She realized that it was time reversal magic that had made her relive her past life. A new fire lit in her eyes, and she asked Vyn to lend her his strength. She was ready to gamble everything in exchange for a truly happy ending. Vyn merely curved his lips into a smile. Of course he would join her. He gently took her hand and reminded her of the covenant between them. No matter what happened, he would stay by her side forever. A goddess heard their prayers. She heard their wish. A true miracle was about to unfold. She heard the longing of every person in every era, and she would grant their wish. A few days later, the imperial capital was immersed in celebration. This was the day of the royal wedding. The people rejoiced, and their lives had returned to normal. Vyn stood before the altar waiting. He looked exceptionally handsome, but he was terribly nervous, constantly glancing toward the door. Where was she? His friends were beginning to grow restless as well. The bride was missing. Apparently, ever since the day the magic was broken, no one had seen Abby. We saw an illusion of her leaving. The brothers explained that everyone had survived. Well, almost everyone. The Empress and the other villains had turned to dust. Their evil deeds had erased them from existence. And the Emperor also received the fate he deserved, and in the cruelest way possible. The third prince shuddered, realizing how foolish he had once been. But at that moment, all anyone could think about was Abby. Had destroying the magic circle taken Abby's life? Just as hope seemed to crumble, her father asked him to take her hand. Vyn held that hand, and a gentle smile appeared on his face. He softly called her name, Abby, and just like that, she appeared in a shower of light. The maids gasped, tears in their eyes. Our girl looked just like a true goddess. She was wearing a wedding dress, and the crowd was completely stunned. She explained her strange current state. If they did not hold hands, her form would not appear. And look who had arrived. Norman, the chaotic mage himself, suddenly popped up. He explained that the bond between them was now deeper than that of any ordinary married couple. Vyn had used all the power he had accumulated to cast time reversal magic, and now he had to continuously generate mana just to allow her to exist. This state of non-existence was the price she had paid to save everyone. Vyn looked at her, his eyes filled with deep love. I missed you so much. She smiled back and told him not to be sad. On the day of their wedding, she looked at her family, finally safe and sound, with Vyn by her side. This was the most perfect ending. As the priest began the ceremony, little Vyn panicked. His mana was about to run out. Little Abby, meanwhile, looked as if she were saying, "Wait, what did you just say?" But in this second life, she had found her own happiness. With one final kiss, they made their vows. This was a love story that truly transcended life and death.